Sorry guys, there was small hiccup. I had to restart my stream because my game restarted. I don't know, like if it was some bug in the game or like it was my own PC. I don't know what happened. Okay, everything is running smoothly now, I guess. I need to play seasonal events. I'll do that sometimes later. I was playing this and my game suddenly crashed. This is so irritating, man. Come on guys, I'm so sorry. Not my fault. I guess now everything is going smoothly. Second place, baby. Phew. That was hard. Join in, guys. Join in. I'm waiting for you. I'm so sorry. My stream crashed. Last stream it crashed. But yeah, I just restarted. All right, next race. So we are already in plat. I was using the ZR1. I guess I have none fuel left. I still have the Enzo Ferrari though. Let's see. Do we have any? None. This will reach at 12.96 seconds. This is 12.44. This will take more time, but the curve is steeper. See, like here, around 300 range, the acceleration is faster on this rather than this. I think I'll apply this. Okay. 75, 76, 78. But the handling will reduce. No, I think I'll keep the handling feather. Barrel roll. Okay, no, but I'll keep this though. Let's play. Let's see how this card does at this rank. So I'm using the Evo Enzo in plat against a bunch of other great cars. All right, second place, I'll take that. Like with Evo, these cars have got a second life, I must say. Like Gameloft has really saved these cars because otherwise no one was using them earlier. To be really honest, I would really ignore these cars until and unless I'm in like some gold 4 or 3 somewhere there. I would never use an Enzo Ferrari, but now look at that. This is OP. I'm like facing Tryons and whatnots. All right, third place. I'll take that any day. Let's see. Look at that. I was fighting Aperta Dendrobium, Tributo, track version, Trial Nemesis, and a 935. This needs to be sniped. Okay. I'll snipe it later on when I win. This was not a victory. I think this has some potential. But I think the previous build was better. What do I have? Yes, this one.
Funny how the tables turned. Didn't think I'd go this far, but here we are, the end. Now you're just a lesson learned. A slowly fading memory, so I can breathe again.
Yo, self-conscious. Welcome.
But you only fake it. Thought you said what we had was sacred. It's a lie.
Let's go with this tuning. Let's see if we can improve our rating using this car. By the way, I will remind you, I'm in Platinum 1. So pretty high up there. And look at that, we have got geared up cars. $112, that was a good timing. What did we beat now? Look at that. Good race. We had an F8 Tributo, I guess. This was a good car. Good lobby. Himalaya proved to be really good for this car. Let's go. Let's win some more with these cars so that we have our better cars for future races. Nevada. Okay. I have to keep in mind a few things. Apart from that, I think I'm good to go for this track. This is a fast-ass track. My car is faster than GT3 RS's. Especially on straighter track. It can even beat the Vandas on top speed. That was a good race. GG's. Netwalk 57 Russ. Good race there. Against the 911. He didn't die. I should have waited before I spun. But yeah, I didn't risk him doing that. So, better coming second than coming fourth or fifth. This will be a tough track. Let's see. What is this Nissan doing here, Nismo? Fuck! Can I pick up speed now? Nah. Futile. That was futile. Okay, so we have used all our fuels on this. I guess I can use something from over here now. Since I'm in plat 1, I think I can use all of these. Then okay, I can use the Tributo. I can use the Utopia Coup. Let's use the Utopia. Let's see how it does. I don't have it at gold, but I guess max would do good. Since like most players are using the Vanda, if I have this car at good enough speed, I think I'll be able to do good. Otherwise, I can switch on to Porsche 911 anytime, any day. Let's see. Kudesh is back. We see a lot of Volcanos, Corvettes.
And so can you. Join the Tick Squad on Google Pay and show your support. Complete tasks and earn ticks. Make every tick a cheer for the team.
क्योंकि सब together है
तो सब tick है.
only one day to go. Click to know more about Google Pay's Tick Squad.
Listen, I know I'm interrupting your music and I'm really sorry, but I promise I'll be just a quick second. I'm Arya, host of Desi Crime Podcast,
And I'm Ishwarya.
and all we wanted to let you know is that there's more than just music for you on Spotify. As a Desi Crime Podcast, we have more than 200 terrifying stories of real crimes from the Indian subcontinent waiting to be heard by you.
These are stories that have kept the country awake, and now can keep you awake at night too. So once I stop yapping, go search for the Desi Crime Podcast on Spotify.
No! Second place again. But okay, good car and good track. I'll take that. I'll take second place. But I wish I could have come first. I think that was a Volcano. Can we change the color of this car somehow? I can't upgrade this. Can we change the color at least? Paint. Okay, interesting. Let's change the color to something else. What the hell is this color? Look at that shit. And everything is paid now. No, I like the original one. This is looking nice. What about this? Yeah, I'll take that. I like how it looks now. Wine red. Good looking car. The Pagani Utopia Coupe. Coupe, however you spell it. Really good car. So we have Osaka. Let's see how it goes. What? Bad race. Your stream ended on YT on both vertical and horizontal. Yeah, man, my OBS crashed, so I had to restart my stream all over again. And this time I didn't start my vertical. I'm just doing the regular horizontal one at a higher bitrate so that you guys can real time see me what I am doing. Pagani, let's go. You can do it. What? My camera angle changed? But I knocked that fucker out. Try on Nemesis, Vanda. Okay, my camera angle somehow changed. I need to change it again to action when my streams, when my race starts again. Let's go. Pagani Utopia Kub. Guys, I'm climbing up MP1 by the way right now, since we don't have much time left. Action, action is cheap. Okay, I'll sit straight. Okay, the perfect nitro is good on this car. Okay, I think that was ATS tech rules tha. Yeah, 1896 I guess. Gold max, look at that rank, 4444. It's a gold max car. It's a really good car. I don't have it at gold. I think I have it at max. Oh, we already reached platinum 3. What? I reached platinum first, then platinum 3, like platinum 4 and then platinum 3. Well, just needed. Oh, I have it at gold max as well, but now I can use the Stradale. Oh, nice. We have a lot of good options from here. Let's see. Let's start with the Stradale. What Evo do we have? We have this engine. Can we have more? Oh, we don't have any more. Okay. ड्राइव टेरेन में कुछ है ना, इसमें हैंडलिंग कम हो जा रहा है. नहीं, नाइट्रो 75. ओके, ये बेटर है. And special pack में I have this. Okay, handling goes down a lot. This also handling goes down a lot. No, I just keep this. Let's see how my Evo tuned Stradale does in this rank. I think it will be very OP. And yeah, you can see a lot of guys using this car. Now I cannot use cars like Vanda and stuff. Now I need something faster. Look at his acceleration, man. I think he has Motherfucker, 107, they were not even in the map. GG's. Look at that. My SF90 rocked. Come on, look at that. That was a good race. GG's. GG's to me. 6638. Wait a minute, let me see if I have source code on. And gaming maybe have source code on. Let's start recording. Oh, as soon as I started recording, it started. No, I think if I start recording, my game will crash. I can't afford that. Let's keep it smoother. I think I like it that way more. And let's win some more races. Oh, we have a Glickenus SCG in the lobby. Fuck. -10. That was so sad, man. I fucked up. Okay. I should not have the tunnel vision. Sometimes I'm getting a slight tunnel vision. Let me just, jerk myself off. Jerk in the sense, not that like breaking my bones and stuff. बचा दिया मैंने अपने आप को. Otherwise I would have died. Fuck. That was a close call. Man, you see Vanda's up here as well. That's crazy. Yo, some cash. I need credits. And look at that acceleration, 89. Insane acceleration. Cairo, I don't think this will be difficult if I don't fuck it up. That is. No! What the fuck did I do? I lost easy points here, man. Fuck! I could have gotten easily 30 points here with this car. Shit. Man, 233 to claim all that. Otherwise 5 hours, no shit. Let's see how much do I have. This is, look at that, what a bad acceleration. Noble का भी मेरा acceleration ना upgraded ही नहीं है. Look at that rank. I would get owned. How is the Valhalla? 82. I need something that accelerates really fast. 80. No, this won't do. This will तो एकदम won't do. Terzo का देखते हैं एक बार. 82. All right, but the handling is very bad. How about the Countach? 80. So my best option would now be the Valhalla concept car. It has got a good acceleration and a good handling. I think this would be much better than other car options. And I have 4 fuel, so let's see if I can get to Platinum 2.
Our team is sticking their way through the ICC.
I just don't like how the nitro, blasts off in your face. Very irritating.
Complete tasks and earn ticks. Make every tick a cheer for
Apart from that, a good car. Look at that.
the sub-tick here.
Good timing there. 130, not bad. Like, not great timing. I could have done a lot better if I focused.
Lean into the sounds.
Like, I would have done it in 108, I guess. Save 4-5 seconds.
Or play your song of the
If for not this season, if he had Ghost.
repeats. Get all the music without
But you have to keep in mind, like, since this is not Ghost, when all the cars are together, I need to rely on a lot of drifting so that these guys don't KD me. Jisoo, psychotic. Okay, 4th it is. I messed up the start, I guess. Still got +2. Let's go, let's go, let's go. I have to win at least 2 more races in order to proceed, I guess. Or maybe more. Let's see how far we go today. People are still using the ZR1. I think still good for this rank. Zappa. Okay, I'll take 4th. I'll take that. Could have done better. Messed up again, as I would say. I think I have to take more risks with these kind of cars. The acceleration is not up there, but it's good. Am I making a mess of my lines and stuff? Absolutely. I'll not disagree. Okay, calm down. What? He knocked me? I thought I would knock him down with my shockwave. What? That's fucking ridiculous, man. And with that, I used all my fuels on this car as well. Such a noob moment. Okay, at least we got some credits there. Hard luck. Now let's see if we can do any good with this. No. Let's use the Countach first. Let's use this. This has got a better acceleration than that car. And then maybe if we need, we'll switch on to Imola as a last option, I guess. What do you suggest, guys? Do you think Imola will stand a chance against the Stradales and the Vandas and the Enzo Ferraris, Evos of the Lord and the Valkyries, etc.? Let me know in the chat. What do you think? City packs. बच गए, third place at least. Plus 12. Let us see. Yeah, Stradales and Aston Martin Valhallas. Oof. I killed like 2 people on that track. This car has got a good floaty. And it is like very easy to control. So I have that advantage on the Countach. So I have an update on my new PC. So I'm on my old PC, sorry, new PC, say. Mufasa, Doomslayer, Samakshara. Let's hope we get first place this time. I have a pretty good car and there is a pretty fast track. If only I don't fuck up. Okay, I'll take third. At least some points. But yeah, it could have been better. Messed up somewhere in the middle. I think I should just go straight, not spin. With these sort of cars, it has got enough nitro, I guess. Spinning is causing me, lose a lot of speed. I think I can spin sometimes, but not all times. So I think I need to work on that. Let's see if we figure it out in this one, because we don't have much fuels to figure that thing out. Okay, I think a good second place. I don't know what car he is using. He's just flying away. Is that Lycan? Must be that. Let's check. Oh no, it was a Stradale. Look at that fly away, man. Evo tuned Stradale OP. Flying away as if like it's some S-Class top car. Like that's the amount of difference you'll get if you raise the Countach alongside with something like the Mosler or the F5, probably. Even the Gemera, I guess. Yeah, the Gemera would be a good comparison between these two cars, the Stradale and the Gemera. Almost the same performance, if I'm not mistaken. Apart from the on-road speed, top speed, the air speed and the nitro speed is quite good, along with the acceleration. He fucked up my speed. Fuck! These Vanda motherfuckers, man. I'll have to use my Mola now. Look at that. That was like purely my mistake. I got excited and messed up my line. I almost fucked up and then somehow recovered. Come on, not too high, fucking shoot. Man, I get this close and then I fuck up. Third place again, man. That was a bitch race. Oh, zard sataye bichua, jab tarsaye bichua. What the fucking wrong is with my physics, man? Fuck! My car lost a lot of speed on that ramp. Physics issue. But at least we got some points. Let's fucking go. A lot of men are using the Evo tuned cars. Like players, not men, players. Good. That was a really bad race, man. Good. The fucking fuck is this season, man? Nah, I don't have any more fuse. What the fuck is wrong with my eyes? Why am I getting flashes? I can max this out, but no. Let's go to MP2 now. We'll stick here for now. We'll come back on this tomorrow. We'll start using our Mosler maybe first.
Listening experience when you download the
And then we'll go to the camera.
Google TV. Watch
Like last few races and then we'll stop. Man, what's wrong with my eyes?
the music with the brand new dark mode that hides the visuals and keeps you in the moment. Tap the banner to learn more.
क्या आपको भी लगता है कि भूत प्रेत आत्माएं और सुपर नेचुरल चीजें बस कहानियां होती हैं? अगर हाँ, तो सुनिए ये जो सिर्फ कहानियां नहीं, उन लोगों के असल अनुभव हैं जिन्हें सुपर नेचुरल ने छुआ है। नमस्कार, मैं हूं प्रिंस सिंह और मैं लाता हूं वो कहानियां जो आपको ये समझाती हैं कि सुपर नेचुरल की दुनिया में कदम रखना कितना खतरनाक हो सकता है। अगर आप भी क्यूरियस हैं सुपर नेचुरल को जानने के लिए, तो स्पॉटिफाई पर फॉलो कीजिए प्रिंस सिंह द हॉरर पॉडकास्ट को, क्योंकि कुछ कहानियां सिर्फ कहानियां नहीं होती हैं।
यार कुछ तो गड़बड़ हो रहा है, मेरे को समझ में नहीं आ रहा क्या। Is it because of the lights? Or is it because my brightness is too low? I think this is looking fine. My eyes were hurting, man. Come on, good track. Mosler should win this. Lost Scott. Okay. Nice, yep. Not able to control this car today, I don't know why. Maybe I was using like handling based cars all along. Look at that. We have got a few S-Class cars now. Like the Speedtail and the LVN.
It's got me turned around, but I can't ignore
Ah,
in this whole damn thing.
I need to practice with this car.
You hold the strings without me knowing. Why do I have to suffer through the thinking? Why do I
Practice and upgrade this car as well. -10 again. Man, all races with this car I came fourth. Very bad start of this stream, especially on MP2. While on MP1 we were doing pretty good actually with the cars selection we had. Right here it's not working out somehow.
Wish I could tell you that I want you here with me, but you'll never love me like the way we used to be. Too far from Saturn, lost in the patterns. Where's the stars align so we could be free? Palms are sweaty, knees unsteady. I can't see my head on straight. Heart is heavy, wasn't ready. Don't think
All right, I guess second place. Did we get any points? Yes, 6 points there. Finally, some points of this car. After a hat trick of losses. Hello, RPM Nick, what's up? Bro, I'm just stuck in Platinum 3 in MP1. What about you? I got rammed the shit out of my cars. I don't play MP. What? What do you play then? Gauntlet? Events? Lost a lot of speed here. Look at that horrible, I'm not even... Man, I'm not able to connect with my car. By the way, have you done the Ferrari Esport event TLE? Yes, I think I have done that. Wait, let me check. This one, right? No, this is the Porsche. Where is the Ferrari one? This one, right? Yeah, I am in top 25. Let's see. Let's see if we can improve our timing. I just can't get it right. Yeah, I'm having a lot of skill issue for it. I don't know, like people have done crazy times. Like they have discovered some shortcut or what. I have no idea.
Stitch it back together, better late than never, steady motion. Can't control my fate, but I control all these emotions. I'm not broken. I'm not broken. Already cried my tears enough for an ocean. I've been in the cold rain on my parade. I'm still on my feet, stand tall like a mountain. I am undefeated, made for the game. Gravity can take his arms around my legs and try to pull me. I'll still never take the greatest hits. I got his
116. I think this is the best time I can do. I can't go below 115. I want to get to 112. My phone doesn't let me alien time this. You can do it, bro. You need a bit of grinding. Man, I don't want to grind behind this game. Yeah, I see already top 5 with that single race. I'll do like some more later on. Oh, I think I need to buy the get the free one and buy this one, and then I guess buy this one and still have some left. Yeah, all right, let's go. We were doing multiplayer. I'm sure I can do, like, if I got 116 like that, I could get 115, but 112, I don't want to get there. My phone doesn't let me. My game is too laggy. I don't have any lags or stuff like that, but who will like race around the same track again and again just to chase a time? And we cannot even participate in esports. Otherwise, Amog would already have.
Hold tight, I've been right where you're standing. Just hold tight to me. The world tries to beat you and leave you lonely, but there's light to see. 'Cause now
And that's the reason I don't play multiplayer. 8-player lobby just lags my phone a lot. Also, be right black. Got to go a class. This time class? What class, man? It's 11 o'clock. You said you live in India. What class is at 11 o'clock? Man, you can go. I mean, I'm not stopping you from going anywhere. I'm just confused. Yeah, phone can be a bit laggy if you don't have. I'm from Peru, my bad. All right. Good, you changed your country. All right. First race was good. Let's see. Look at that Agera fly away. Beautiful to look at from the back. And yeah, it has a shockwave as well. I've activated some weird camera mode. Alright, Agera OP. I never said I'm from India, lol. My bad. I thought maybe you said that the other day, but yeah, my bad. I might have confused. Alright. Bad race, bad race. I could have done a lot better. I didn't have shock waves on the ramps. Today I'm not able to connect with this game. I don't know why. Look at that. We have an F5 in the lobby. Both Sinfonico.
Blank before me. Where do I begin? The fear of what's uncertain. The unknown feels like home. With every step I'm finding a place I've never known. Let's go where no one has ever been. A world unseen beneath our skin. Friendless skies will break the chain. Uncharted lands will claim them all. Rise like tides and let it fall. Just in the sea. Come drift with me. Come drift with me.
Man, look at my speed on a camera, especially on this track. Such a noob I am. And what a noob he is! What? What a noob, limp 1987. He fucked up that last corner. I somehow made it. Guys, I think that's it for today. I'm not, my eyes are hurting. I'm not able to connect with the game. Let's see, I just have to play seasonal events. Alright, let's do one race. Which one should I do? I think I should do this one. Oh no, but I won't get the max because, yep, I can collect 100 and get those. Fuck it, like one race and then we will just leave. I'm not feeling like, my eyes are still hurting. Okay, so with this 100 done, I think I'll just collect a few more and crash. And crash. Nice. Still got to 120 even after those crashes. Let's do a trick. Okay, couldn't do that. At least we got that. Oh, 4-star car. Oh man, I should have used this car for that. Fuck, I have to do one more race. I have to get 100. But my car is not upgraded. That's the issue. I don't think I'll be able to go to 4 stars.
moment is calling for. Whether it's turning up the party or winding down to relax in the evening. Curate the day's soundtrack with ad-free music listening and offline downloads on Spotify Premium. Tap
Ah.
to learn more.
I think I need to upgrade my car now. Let's do this. We'll also have the 5 tokens. I think we need to do something with the handling. But I think I should not spend money now. No, I won't. I still have a few days. We'll see. All right, guys. I think that's it. Thank you so much for tuning in. My game crashed. It wasn't that fun. But yeah. Yeah, this is looking good over here. And yeah, it can go as on when it reveals itself. All right, guys, thank you so much.
पूरा बहुत रूप मिला है कि तो आइए चर्चा करते हैं। चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें, वीडियो को लाइक करें। जी आज तो आरएसएस की पटाखा फैला गई कर्नाटका में, जो कर्नाटका सरकार ने उल्टे पुल्टे जो ऑर्डर निकाले थे कि किसी सरकारी पार्क, सरकारी रोड, सरकारी वाटर बॉडी, सरकारी बिल्डिंग में आप अपना किसी भी प्रकार को 10 नहीं हो सकते, वो लाइन ऑफ कर सकते, उसमें आज कर्नाटका हाईकोर्ट में स्टे करेंगे। दरअसल ये जो प्रोजेक्ट है ना, ये राहुल गांधी और मल्लिकार्जुन खड़गे का प्रोजेक्ट, आपको तो पता ही है। क्योंकि प्रियंका जो है ना, इसके बारे में प्रियंका खड़गे जो है वो पंचायती राज मंत्री है वहाँ का, और वहाँ का ये तो पंचायती कितना पंचायती राज मंत्री पंचायती। हाँ, तो आपको याद होगा कि इसकी शुरुआत कहाँ से हुई थी। वो जो वीडियो था जो विलेज डेवलपमेंट अफसर कहते हैं हमारे यहाँ, वो उसने किसी आरएसएस कार्यक्रम में भाग लिया था, और फिर उसके बाद वो वीडियो जो है सीधा पहुंचा दिया गया राहुल गांधी के पास कि आप देखिए यहाँ खड़गे जी का लड़का जो है वो मंत्री है, और यहाँ पे आरएसएस के कार्यक्रम में सरकारी अधिकारी शामिल हो रहे हैं। तो उसके बाद ये ऊपर से इस पे कोई कार्रवाई करो। अब प्रियंका खड़गे ने जो है चमचागिरी की पावर 2 दिखाते हुए उसमें जो है उसको सस्पेंड करे, साथ ही साथ ये भी लिखित में चिट्ठी लिख दी होती है तो के साथ सरकारी कार्यक्रमों, सरकारी बिल्डिंगों में और इनमें जो है आरएसएस के जो कर्मचारी हैं इन सबका काम बंद हो, ये लिख सके हैं। लेकिन वो ये भूल गए थे सर कि सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने ऑलरेडी जो है 2016 में ये कर दिया था कि आरएसएस तो वो जो क्लॉज था कि पॉलिटिकल वाला कि आरएसएस राजनीतिक राजनीतिक शब्द इसमें हटवा के वो दी, तो उसके बाद तो मतलब नहीं रह जाता, आप अपने लोकल लेवल पे कर रहे हैं। और ये तो मुझे लग रहा है कि एक तरीके से 2028 में जब चुनाव होगा तब उसमें कांग्रेस का ऊपरा पूरी तरह से साफ हो जाए, ये तमाम इंतजाम उसके हो। एक मामला वो चल ही रहा है, जाति जनगणना वाला, आपको पता ही है, सर्वे वाला, हमने शायद पहले भी डिस्कस किया था। पहले के पुराना वाला काट दिया, अब नया वाला ले आए, नए वाले की क्या स्थिति होगी उसके ऊपर ले आए, उसको 31 अक्टूबर से की डेट रखी हुई है। देखिए उसका कार्य उसमें भी यही चल रहा है। वहाँ क्या है कि कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट चल रहा है। सिद्धरमैया वर्सेस डीके शिव कुमार के चाहता है कि चाहे बर्बाद हो जाए कांग्रेस, चाहे अगली बार सरकार में ना आए, लेकिन सिद्धरमैया का ये आखिरी कार्यकाल होना चाहिए। हो सकता है कि आने वाले टाइम में डीपीएस जो है वो बीजेपी के साथ हाथ मिला दे, क्योंकि ये जो जाति जनगणना वाला इस रवैया करा रहे हैं वो यही दिखाना चाहते हैं कि भैया यहाँ वो किसी जाते हैं ना, एक गायक है और ना ये वाले वो कभी का इतने सारे नहीं है। अब मैं तो अगर मुझे हटाओगे तो ये सारे ओबीसी नाराज हो जाएंगे, आप करते रहो वो कभी का और तो कांग्रेस की इन फाइटिंग चल रही है। वो मामला आप भूल गए जब इनकी जमीने इन्हें अलॉट करा दी थी सिद्धरमैया की फैमिली को, वो मामला इसका चल ही रहा है। उसमें मेरे ख्याल में मामला वहां तक पहुंचा हुआ है, लोकायुक्त वगैरह तक वहां तक पहुंचा हुआ है, काफी आगे पहुंचा हुआ है वो मामला, अभी उसमें कोई रिलीफ नहीं मिला है। तो ये कांग्रेस की इन फाइटिंग चल रही है। यहाँ बीजेपी को कुछ करने की जरूरत नहीं है। बीजेपी को सिर्फ यहाँ पे जरूरत है एक लीडरशिप, जो बीजेपी के पास यहाँ नहीं है, वही बिहार वाली कि यहाँ पे वहां तो चलो फिर भी है कि आप सेकंड नंबर पे रहते हो या लाइट हो वहाँ पे, लेकिन यहाँ तो आप सिंगल हैंडेडली आपको अकेले में चुनाव लड़ना है, किसी लोकल दल का आपको समर्थन नहीं लेना है। बीजेपी वालों को लीडरशिप भी नहीं है यहाँ पे। आप बताइए अगला चुनाव अगर लड़ेंगे तो उसके लिए क्या तैयारी है? क्या ये बॉम्बे के नाम पे लड़ेंगे? ये दुरप्पा को लड़ा दिए उस तरह चुनाव में आपके पास सेफ क्या होगा? ये सबसे बड़ी कमी है। वरना कांग्रेस वालों ने तो आप अपने इंतजाम कर लिया है, जैसे आपके राजस्थान में हुआ था कि अशोक गहलोत ने और सचिन पायलट ने पूरा इंतजाम कर दिया था कि ना तू गले बीजेपी है, तो वहां को ये कहानी चलती है। अब इस पे आज कोर्ट ने इसने नहीं दिया है आरएसएस वाले पे, इसमें बीजेपी को घर बैठे बैठाए एक मौका मिल गया। और मुझे लग रहा है सर इस इंसिडेंट के बाद जब वो अधिकारी सस्पेंड कराया था प्रियंका खड़गे ने, उसके बाद सरकारी कर्मचारियों की नाराजगी है। सरकारी कर्मचारी तो वैसे ही के खिलाफ जो काम उस तरह करती है बता और सुंदर भैया जो है वो सारे उद्देश्य में काम किया मतलब जैसे कि भाई तो आप दशहरा पे चामुंडेश्वरी माता जी के यहाँ उसका जो उद्घाटन होता है उसके बाद कोई लेकर आगे चांद पूछ के ये बात है कि कल उसकी दो बताएं लेकिन ये जो आपने बात बताई ना लेकिन वोट चोरी की बात करेंगे तो उसके अलावा कुछ नहीं आप देखते हैं क्या बात करता है और ये जो कर्नाटक वाली आपने बात बताई आप एक चीज बहुत लोगों ने मिस किया है बेंगलुरु के इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को लेके वहां का जो एलीट क्लास है उसने रवैया को डी के शिव कुमार को पेला आपको याद होगा किरण शाह को बुलाया डी के शिव कुमार ने अंदर सोशल मीडिया पे लिखा है के खिलाफ ये साहब इतना घटिया इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है आपका यहाँ पानी लग जाता है दिन भर जाम रहता है बेंगलुरु को आप कहते हो कि ये साइबर सिटी है ये है फलाना है ढिमकाना है वाकई तो बुला के वो कर रहा है आप बताइए ना कि मिडिल क्लास आपसे परेशान है हिंदू आपसे दुखी है सरकारी कर्मचारी आपसे परेशान है जो बिजनेसमैन है वहाँ के आईटी के जो सेक्टर के बड़े लोग हैं वो आपसे परेशान है तो आपके साथ है तो ये फंस रहे हैं जान में अच्छा इसमें एक और भी शौक होती है तो यहाँ तो देखा होगा कि ये प्रियम करके आसाम गया तो यहाँ पे जो लोग है ना वो AI वाले वो असम जा रहे हैं और आंध्रा जा रहे हैं गूगल वाले आंध्रा के जो असम और गुजरात में जो AI मॉड्यूल्स हैं वो वहाँ कर रहे हैं तो उसको लेके बड़ी बयानबाजी की है तो वहाँ असम में तो कह दिया कि वही कर गई जिंदगी है तो वहाँ ये खड़गे का कोई क्रिया खड़गे और एक वो चिदम्बरम का लड़का कुछ है क्या आपने कभी सुना इनमें कोई है कई मटेरियल एक बड़े बाप के बेटे होने के अलावा इनके पास है क्या कोई अपना विजन नहीं है सोच नहीं है इन लोगों की कोई स्टोरी नहीं है किसी को लेकर कोई स्टडी नहीं है ये तो बस चल रहे हैं किस्मत से अपनी किस्मत का खा रहे हैं सब में जाए तो भी जाए सब का तो मामला और ही हो रहा है कोई अल्लाह ही मचाने लगे के साथ वहाँ सही क्यों नहीं हो रही है और जो ना क्लियर नहीं वहाँ का मामला अलग है पहले से ही हमने अलग वहाँ NRC का और बाकी सब चीजों का मसला है तब उसमें अल्लाह मचाने लगे कि आप लेकिन ये काम इन्होंने बढ़िया किया इसने यूपी भी शामिल कर लिया मैं जितने सारा बात हो रहा है यूपी शामिल करके तो यूपी यूपी को ये डालना गया है कि कल को ये ना कहे कि भाई सारे विपक्ष वालों के पीछे पड़े हुए हैं बीजेपी का सबसे बड़ा स्टेट है सबसे ज्यादा स्टेट पे यूपी राजस्थान यूपी छत्तीसगढ़ हाँ तो मजेदार है वैसे एक बात कर रही है लेकिन एक बात कर्नाटक हो जाएगा सर अभी ये 27 तक का ही लिखता है ना कर्नाटक में टाइम है अभी मुझे लग रहा है कि थोड़ा सा कर्नाटका में है वो राजस्थान MP छत्तीसगढ़ तो पहले ही है ये तो सारे इकट्ठे ही है
नमस्ते मेरे भैया। इस वीडियो में हमें बहुत दर्द होगा, बहुत दुख होगा, खून के आंसू रोएंगे हम सब और हंसेंगे भी हो सकता है, और हम कोशिश करेंगे सोचने की, एक्सप्लेन करने की। खूंखार रेसिस्ट मीम्स देखने वाले हैं हम इसमें, जो हम लोग के ऊपर ही बनाए जाते हैं, भारतीयों पे। रेसिज्म तो चल ही रहा भाई, तुम काम कर रहे हो इसलिए। अब एक ही चीज बची है तुम्हारे पास, तुम्हारा अपना काम, जो डिफाइन करेगा तुम कितना कमाओगे, कितनी प्रॉस्पेरिटी रखोगे, कौन सी कारें खरीदोगे, लैम्बो होगी, फरारी होगी, कौन से सूट पहनोगे, कितना बड़ा घर होगा और कितनी खुशी होगी। रोक सको तो रोक लो, फिलॉसफी लाओ भाई, जितना आराम करना है वो करने दो। मैं यहाँ पे हूँ, ये है सीढ़ी सक्सेस की, मुझे बस सीढ़ी चढ़नी है। चढ़ते चलेंगे, चलते चलेंगे, चढ़ते चलेंगे, चढ़ते चलेंगे, चढ़ते चलेंगे, चढ़ते चले जाएंगे। जिसको फटी हुई है, जिससे ऑर्गेनाइज नहीं होता, जिसमें डिसिप्लिन घंटे भर का नहीं है भैया, वो अटैक मोड उठाओ। अटैकर को देखो, सारे अटैकर नीचे लिखो भैया कितना काम किया। अटैक मोड सिस्टम जिसके अंदर भैया काम कैसे करना है, कैसे ऑर्गेनाइज होना है, कैसे काम को मैनेज करना है, कैसे अपने हर दिन को जीत लेना है। कुल मिला के तुम्हारे हर दिन अगर तुम जीत रहे हो तो एक डालना चाहूंगा इंडिया को कि भैया वर्ल्ड में बेस्ट क्यूजीन्स में 100 कहाँ, कैसे आपने कंपेयर।
Well, hello. Oh boy. Well, hello there, Game of Thrones fans. Welcome to another.
We all.
Well, hello there, Game of Thrones fans. Welcome to another channeling of frustration into art. You've already seen me tear apart the bad half of Game of Thrones, so I thought it was time to take a look and see if the good half is as great as we like to remember it. As the runtime of this video already suggests, yes it is, and that's covering all 4 of the good seasons. But, being the bona fide hater that I am, nothing gets past my troll eyes. Like, comment, and subscribe if you like what you see. This is Every Error in Game of Thrones Seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4. When Will reports of how an entire wildling encampment, men, women, and children all, was brutally slain, his colleague's response is complete and utter nonsense. They even killed the children.
It's a good thing we're not children.
Alrighty. A strange change from the books comes in episode 2 in the addition of Cersei's black-haired beauty, a child supposedly conceived by King Robert, not Jaime. I lost my first. Child from the books comes in episode 2 in the addition of Cersei's black-haired beauty, a child supposedly conceived by King Robert, not Jaime.
I lost my first boy, little black-haired beauty. I never knew.
Now, this child's existence is only ever acknowledged in this one scene. A royal pregnancy, especially at first, would be the talk of the town, between best friends, nevertheless. Not to mention it being one of the cornerstone traumas that makes Cersei wake up every morning and choose violence.
He came to take his body away, and Robert held me. I screamed the night battle, but he held me, for he looked just like him.
Stranger still is that the child isn't mentioned at all in the lineages and histories of the great houses of Westeros that Ned picks up when investigating Jon Arryn's death.
Forgive me. It's the last thing you need to hear right now.
And if this is just Cersei being cruel and messing with Catelyn, no suggestion as to that is ever given, nor does this information ever come back to cause any misunderstandings or controversies. And that's it for Season 1. Nothing more. It is that good. Then in Season 2, at the gates of Qarth, Daenerys and her people face certain death as...
If you do not let us in, all of us will die.
Unless she does the radical thing of simply showing off her dragons a little bit.
Might we see the dragons?
But instead of complying with this modest request, she threatens to burn the city to the ground.
When my dragons are grown, we will take back what was stolen from me and destroy those who wronged me.
Someday. A threat she won't be able to realize if she is turned away indeed.
Only, as you said a moment ago, if we don't let you into the city, you will all die.
Later, Stannis and Melisandre use a one-hit shadow assassin to kill Renly, but despite this being insanely efficient, completely overpowered, and at seemingly no expense, it's not possible to do this over and over again because...
The inner sun.
I cannot.
Why?
You don't have the strength. It would kill you.
Okay, so in the books, it's actually explained that the creation of the Shadow Demon Assassin drains Stannis' life force, and we see this as Stannis sleeps less, looks radically older, and appears exhausted after the demon is made. But in the show, no such signs are added, and the reason they don't simply copy-paste this tactic until the world is theirs becomes pretty contrived and apparent.
Your fires burn low, my king.
Emotional damage! In the books, Quaithe is only ever seen by Daenerys, which begs the question whether she's even a real person or some kind of vision. What we do see in the show, however, even hints at her being a faceless man.
Who are you?
I'm no one.
And she warns Jorah about the perils Daenerys is about to face, which isn't a problem in and of itself, but if she is indeed a faceless man, it doesn't make sense for her to support a Targaryen out of the blue, seeing as the Targs were part of the ruling class of Valyria that the first faceless men rebelled against once upon a time. And if Quaithe is a vision sent by someone else, then how and why? Is this the doing of the Three-Eyed Raven, or some sorcerer burning the parts of little boys? In my opinion, Quaithe could have been a neat little device to expand on Daenerys' eventual descent into madness, provided she was an illusion that Dany kept to herself. This would have provided some semblance of build-up to her making herself the Queen of the Ashes. Stick around for the upcoming video series on fixing Game of Thrones, where we delve into such potential improvements. When Jorah says,
"Moving carefully is the hard way, but it's the right way,"
Daenerys responds with,
And if I'd listened to that advice, the gates of Karth would all be dead by now.
but this advice was never given at the gates of Karth, and the reason they're still alive is by no means thanks to Daenerys' masterclass in diplomacy, but rather to lucking out with Zara thinking she's hot and vouching for her. Basically, all the choreography in this fight. Corran and the other Night's Watchmen leave Jon to execute a captive wildling alone, to no apparent benefit. It could be speculated that this was a deliberate way to test Jon's guts, or even Corran counting on the extremely unlikely scenario of Jon sparing Ygritte's life and then join and infiltrate the wildlings. There's also the far-fetched idea that Corran might want to see Jon captured by the wildlings in order to garner sympathy from the Lord of Winterfell, who might send men and supplies to the Watch, so that they might rescue Jon as well as Benjen, who is also lost beyond the wall at this point. But again, there's nothing concrete in the show to support these theories, making them little more than vague speculation. Also, they tell Jon to meet them at the top. Meet you at the top. So shouldn't they be able to see Ygritte escaping and try to do something about it? Regardless, Ygritte escapes, and that's where Jon jumps through a wormhole to intercept her. At Harrenhal, Arya takes the life-threatening risk of carrying off a letter from Tywin to read it, instead of just reading it on the table where it was. Also, when Amory Lorch gets his hand on the letter and brings it back up to Tywin, he is swiftly taken out by Jaqen in all fairness, but the letter is still in his possession, which ought to raise a question or two. But the letter and how it wound up in the hands of Lorch is quickly forgotten about. Over in Winterfell, Osha, who at this point has been forced back into Theon's service, sneaks out of the castle, but she doesn't eliminate Theon while she has the chance, even though that would have been a safer way to escape, leaving their pursuers leaderless and in disarray. After having already captured Corran Halfhand and decided not to kill Jon on the spot, the wildlings put the two prisoners right next to each other for no apparent reason, instead of keeping them at a safe distance from one another, which of course allows them to conspire.
That's too much of a war. I do so. One brother outside is not even worth 1,000 fighting against it. You'll never trust me. Hey, mate. If you do what needs to be done.
How to get the $2,000 browser for free. Download Comet right now. That's it. No credit card, no wait list. Here's what makes it different from every other AI tool you've used before. This is Comet.
As Stannis lands at the Mud Gate for the invasion of King's Landing, he not only spearheads the charge without shield or helmet himself, but not a single archer on the wall targets him specifically, something which, of course, could end the rebellion right there on the spot. Stannis is then, again, first up the ladders, still no shield or helmet, mind you, the stones and arrows conveniently nowhere near him, and he's allowed to waltz right over the walls, virtually uncontested. And he remains on the walls all the way up until Taiwan's forces swoop in to save the day, but without finding Stannis and totally letting him get away somehow. Remember how Winterfell was surrounded by northern forces?
I want you to know you're surrounded. I know I'm surrounded.
With no sleep and nowhere to run, the Ironborn decide to pack up and leave, do so successfully.
Let's go home.
Also, when Bran and gang leave the next day, no northern forces have entered Winterfell, and none are surrounding it anymore. Where did they all go? Okay, this is a bit silly, but when the Lord of Bones cuts Jon's bounce, it rings like steel on steel. Hardly worth mentioning, but kind of ridiculous at the same time. When Daenerys comes for her betrayer Zara, not only are there no guards protecting the King of Karth, but Blood Rider Kvarro magically snatches Zara's necklace without either breaking it or jerking Zara's head significantly. The Warlocks of Karth attempt to murder Daenerys with a scorpion. No, not those, the animal. Showing their intent not to let her slip away. Only that's exactly what they do, and are never seen or heard of again. As Bran and gang are resting up, Osha suddenly looks at absolutely nothing and stops what she's doing because...
I don't know what be after us. No one even knows we're alive.
Shut up and move, I guess. When Miro, the leader of the Second Sons, grabs at Missandei, she reacts as if this were unusual behavior, as if this wasn't her everyday life for the last few years. A more realistic reaction might have been to descend without looking so surprised, which is exactly what she does when he smacks her on the bum a minute later. When Arya and the Hound chance upon some Frey soldiers hanging out in the woods, Arya rocks up to get some vengeance, and right after she shivs one of them, the Hound teleports in to take out the rest by surprise. And in the very next scene, we've got Jon Snow, who just escaped the wildlings by riding off on a horse, now with a target on his back, as Ygritte has teleported in, completely horseless, to relate to Jon just about the extent of his knowledge. How did you get there so fast? Not important, I guess. When the former slaves of Astapor come out to receive Daenerys, Missandei says they all owe their freedom to the Mother of Dragons, but Daenerys wrongfully corrects her and says, this doesn't make sense, seeing as they've already been liberated by her. However, in the case that she's talking about a more philosophical or spiritual freedom, then Missandei is still not wrong for attributing their worldly liberation to Daenerys. This may seem like a trivial point, but it's a vital sign of deteriorating writing, which stands in stark contrast to the exceptional quality of that in early season 3. When Jaime first starts training with Bronn, he brings a Valyrian steel sword to practice with, as if that were appropriate for sparring.
Problem is, if you fight with an edge blade, I'll have to. If I fight with an edge blade, I'll have no one left to pay me.
After Daario Naharis slates the champion of Meereen, Daenerys addresses the city, but she's so far away that there's no chance in Seven Hells anyone could possibly hear what she's saying, and yet it's made out as if they all do. When Jon is training recruits at the wall, he sets Locke against him, poor fool who immediately gets knocked out cold. No one comes to help him. Worse, after training is done, they just leave the poor guy on the ground to fend off the brain damage all on his own.
Can't afford to lose a single man.
When Bran and gang come upon Craster's Keep and see the mutineers from the Night's Watch, Mira, who has no experience of the Night's Watch, somehow correctly points out that...
I might have a Night's Watch once, not anymore.
Just how would she know that? She then breaks from hiding while speaking loudly and without checking where she's going whatsoever, which of course results in her getting Hollywood knocked out by the mutineers, who conveniently knew where to find and surround them all along. Then, when Jon and his task force approach the keep, they actually make sure to scout the area before engaging.
11 men, most of them already drunk. No guards posted, they don't seem to have a care in the world.
But when they finally do attack, they may as well have been a horde of Dothraki the way they scream and shout without a sense of stealth to speak of. And then when Carl, who...
Having not survived since 2009, I was a legend, you know. You know what?
When Carl, the f***ing legend, knocks Jon to the ground and gets stabbed in the back by one of Craster's wives, He turns his attention towards her, completely neglecting John, who obviously comes back to kill him.
Something pretty bad happened to me, so that's probably why I'm acting weird.
How bad?
I guess really bad.
So much for the top pay cut Turpin flea bottom, I guess. The small council meeting on the topic of Daenerys with her 8,000 unsullied and 3 dragons, Tywin says something quite a bit out of character.
Dragons haven't won a war in 300 years. Armies win them all the time.
We both know you're smarter than that.
After the Hound is sneak attacked by Biter and miraculously snaps his neck in one fell swoop, Arya casually walks up to Rorsch, draws her sword and stabs him to death before he can even react, even though his sword is already in his hand. The wilding attack on the wall contains a few errors, starting with Egbert's Matrix dodge. I could be missing something here, but these empty barrels blowing people up. Then John has his head smashed into an anvil, but recovers immediately. In general, it's unlikely that the wildlings wouldn't have sent any climbers up the wall beforehand to run along and take defenders to top the wall of Castle Black unawares. As you can tell, the numbers speak for themselves. Yes, it gets a bit nitpicky at times, and it's not for lack of trying to find substantial errors here. I've tried as hard as ever, and this is it. Do let me know if you think I missed something, but remember, changes from the books are not necessarily errors, just different creative choices. I don't think anyone has a problem with Arya and Tywin and Harrenhal, for example. This concludes the Every Error series for Game of Thrones. Next up is a big video series on fixing Game of Thrones, where we go all the way back to where the creative choices stop making sense.
Game of Thrones Season 5, the season it all going to fall apart. Despite the downward spiraling of Tyrion's character and the systematic lack of substance, Season 5 still has its moments of brilliance. Perhaps running a reduced the source material was what allowed.
Often teasing and annoying his fellow divinities. When he came of age, he assumed the role of messenger, travelling with a golden rod as a mark of his authority. Aided by his winged helmet and sandals, he would use them to fly around and deliver messages, frequently travelling between Olympus and the underworld. Here, he would help Hades, acting as a shepherd for the souls of the dead, guiding them as they made their way to the afterlife. World. Here, he would help Hades, acting as a shepherd for the souls of the dead, guiding them as they made their way to the afterlife. Like the other gods, Hermes was known to father many children with various women, but one of his sons, Pan, the god of nature and fertility, would be born with the features of a satyr, creatures that were part man and part goat. But when he was born, Pan's mother, a nymph named Dryo, was so horrified to see her newborn baby with a pair of horns, a full-grown beard and hooves, that she would run away screaming in terror at the very sight of him. However, Hermes would take his child up to Mount Olympus and introduce him to the rest of the gods, who were so intrigued by the boy's hideous appearance and charmed by his playful attitude that they would soon come to adore him. None would love him more than Dionysus, the god of wine and parties, who would give him the name Pan, meaning all, as he was beloved by all the gods of Olympus. But much like his father, Pan was known for his many affairs with nymphs, the nature deities that inhabited streams and forests across the world. But one nymph, by the name of Syrinx, would become the object of Pan's affections, with him pursuing her through the marshes where she lived. Terrified of the god, Syrinx would try desperately to escape him, transforming herself into a bed of water reeds when she neared the river's edge. When Pan finally reached the river, he would tear through the marsh, trying to uncover the terrified nymph. But as he did so, a strong breeze would blow through the reeds, producing a beautiful melody unlike any he'd heard before. Inspired by the sound, Pan would uproot the reeds and bind them together with wax, creating a set of pipes. Sitting down, he would play a tune in the memory of his lost love Syrinx, with the instrument being named the panpipes after its creator, and carried by the god wherever he went. The god of wine and parties, Dionysus would have an unusual birth when his mother Semele asked Zeus to appear before her in his true form, the sight of which would cause her to die of terror. Taking the infant that was growing inside her, Zeus would place it in his thigh until the baby was fully grown, with Dionysus being born a few months later. Becoming one of the most loved gods in Greece, Dionysus would be seen as a symbol of pleasure, with his followers engaging in mass drinking, crazed dancing and lovemaking. Known as the Liberator, Dionysus would create a new drink called wine, which helped his followers stem their pain, while also bringing them joy and euphoria.
Introducing Grammarly, like you've never seen before. Your all-in-one writing essential. This is Paraphraser, your go-to tool for writing that's sharp, clear, and ready for whatever hat you put on. It works like this. Here are some notes from a busy meeting. Paraphraser helps turn messy notes into polished writing, no extra effort required. Click on the icon to choose the tone of voice, and voila! Professional, casual, friendly, you name it. Today, it's all business. With just a few clicks, the message is clearer, sharper, and more professional, without losing your voice. Paraphraser is just one of Grammarly's powerful agents. Grammarly's got everything you need to write with confidence, no matter what you're working on.
While he spent much of his time partying, Dionysus was also a generous god, willing to grant mortals their deepest desires. After saving a close friend of Dionysus, King Midas was granted a single wish in thanks. Obsessed with wealth and fortune, Midas asked for his deepest desire, the power to turn anything he touched into gold. Dionysus would grant Midas his wish, with him returning to his palace in joy, touching everything the eye could see. Soon the floors, walls, and even his clothes were gold, with Midas flaunting his wealth to guests from across the kingdom. After displaying his abilities for hours, Midas would become parched, ordering his servants to fetch him some water. However, as the liquid touched his lips, it too would turn to gold. Panicking, he would reach out across the table, but the bread, wine, meat, and fruit would all turn into the precious metal. Nothing he touched could be consumed. Cursing the gift, Midas would begin to cry, with the sound of his sobbing alerting his daughter, who came to console him. But as she touched his hand, her fingers would begin to stiffen. Soon her whole arm was gold, and before long, all that remained was a statue of a little girl reaching out to comfort her father. Mourning the loss of his child, Midas would return to Dionysus, begging him to revoke his gift. Pitying the man, Dionysus instructed him to bathe in the river Pactolus, with his golden touch being washed away in the water. Becoming a normal man once again, the story of King Midas would serve as a warning for those who would prioritize wealth above all else. One of the 12 Olympians and the sister of Zeus, Demeter, was the goddess of farming, ensuring that the harvest was rich and that the land remained fertile. Under her watch, the fields knew no decay, but the earth consumed in an endless spring. But there was one thing she prized above all else, her daughter Persephone. However, Persephone had another admirer, with Hades taking a keen interest in her. One day, while she was strolling through a meadow, a beautiful flower would bloom before her, a narcissus, something she had never seen before. But when Persephone reached down to pluck it, the earth would break open and swallow her, with Hades dragging Persephone down into the underworld, where she would be forced to marry him. Distraught at her daughter's disappearance, Demeter would search for 9 days and nights, until the sun god Helios revealed her captor's identity. Demeter would lock herself away for an entire year, refusing to return until Persephone was released. But without the goddess of farming, the world entered into a great famine, with the fields turning barren. It was only now that humanity was forced to intervene, ordering Hades to return Persephone to her mother. Although Hades would agree, before she left, he fed Persephone the food of the dead, a single pomegranate seed, binding her to the underworld for eternity. In order to save humanity, Zeus was forced to make a compromise. For 9 months of each year, Persephone would return to live with her mother on Olympus, with Demeter's joy causing nature to bloom across the earth. However, for the final 3 months, Persephone would return to Hades in the underworld, a period we now call winter, with Demeter's grief at the absence of her daughter, causing the plants to die and the world to freeze over. And so it was that this season began. Of all the gods of ancient Greece, there were few feared more than Hades, the brother of Zeus and Poseidon. Hades was lord of the underworld, an isolated place where the souls of the dead would reside. But although he ruled the kingdom of the dead along with his wife Persephone, Hades would not command death itself. Instead, that power lay with Thanatos, who would claim the souls of mortals when they died, with Hermes the messenger god, then guiding the souls to the shores of the underworld. Waiting at the shore would be the eternal ferryman Charon, who was the only one able to guide the deceased across the deadly river Styx, a giant waterway that separated the earth from the underworld. Only those who had coins placed onto their tongue when buried were able to pay Charon's fee, with those who could not afford the journey, destined to wander the shores of the river Styx for 100 years before they were allowed to cross. Having travelled along the river Styx, the souls would pass the White Rock, arriving at the giant adamantine gates of the underworld, where Cerberus, the three-headed dog, stood guard, ready to devour intruders or those trying to escape. Resuming their journey and coming ashore, the souls would be directed towards the court of the underworld, where 3 judges would decide their fate. The judges would examine each soul, looking through every action they had made while alive. For those who had not angered the gods, a tranquil place lay before them, but for those who had, an eternity of misery and suffering awaited. After a judgment was reached, the souls would be directed along one of 3 paths, either to the fields of Asphodel, the eternal paradise of Elysium, or to the deepest depths of Hades' realm, Tartarus, a place of scalding fire. The fields of Asphodel were a peaceful place for those who did not achieve anything notable in life, good or evil. It would be here that most souls were sent, and after 1,000 years had passed and their time had finally come to an end, each person would drink from the river Lethe, whose waters would wipe away their memory. Born anew, each soul, having forgotten their previous life, would be reincarnated and return to the earth, starting the eternal cycle once more. The second path, however, would lead to Elysium, a paradise of eternal bliss, where the souls of heroes, demigods, and especially good mortals would reside. Those sent here were loved by the gods, and could experience all of life's pleasures, with parties, feasts, and hunting consuming much of their time. Each soul would be given the option to return to Earth, but most would choose to stay, and not have to endure once again the hardships of life. Within Elysium, but across the shore, lay the Isle of the Blessed, reserved only for the greatest of heroes, with Helen of Troy, Achilles, and Achilles awaited. Or to the deepest depth, think notable in life, good or evil. It would be here that most souls were sent, and after 1,000 years had passed, and their time had finally come to an end, each person would drink from the river Lethe, whose waters would wipe away their memory. Born anew, each soul, having forgotten their previous life, would be reincarnated and return to the earth, starting the eternal cycle once more. The second path, however, would lead to Elysium, a paradise of eternal bliss, where the souls of heroes, demigods, and especially good mortals would reside. Those sent here were loved by the gods, and could experience all of life's pleasures, with parties, feasts, and hunting consuming much of their time. Each soul would be given the option to return to Earth, but most would choose to stay and not have to endure once again the hardships of life. Within Elysium, but across the shore, lay the Isle of the Blessed, reserved only for the greatest of heroes, with Helen of Troy, Achilles and Odysseus, all residing there for eternity. The third and last path would lead to Tartarus, the deepest depths of the underworld, reserved only for the worst of criminals and those who had offended the gods. It would be here that Cronus and the other titans would reside, looking on for eternity, as new souls entered the realm of the damned. This would be the only place Hades would become involved, with the god himself designing and overseeing each soul's punishment based on their previous crimes. For the Danaides, 49 sisters who had each killed their husbands, Hades forced them to fill a tub with water to cleanse them of their crimes, but as the tub would always leak, they would spend an eternity trying to fill it. Ixion, the first man to murder a family member and who had grown lustful for Zeus's wife, would be bound to a wheel of fire that would spin for the rest of time, whereas Tantalus, a man who had killed his son and stolen from Zeus, was cursed to eternal hunger and thirst. He would stand in a pool of water with the branches of a fruit tree hanging above him. Spin for the rest of time, whereas Tantalus, a man who had killed his son and stolen from Zeus, was cursed to eternal hunger and thirst. He would stand in a pool of water with the branches of a fruit tree hanging above him. However, as he went to quench his thirst, the water would recede, and as he went to eat, the branches would rise out of reach, forever leaving him in a state of agony. But of all the punishments, the most famous would be given to Sisyphus. Having cheated death multiple times, Sisyphus would pay the ultimate price for tricking the gods. Every day he was to roll a boulder up a steep hill, only to have it slip from his grasp as he neared the peak. Having to start over again and again, Sisyphus would suffer his punishment for the rest of time. Although Hades would have complete control over the underworld, his realm was so vast that he had to enlist the help of the Furies to carry out his punishment. But they would not only be confined to the realm of the dead. The murder of a family member was considered so terrible in Greek society that even those still alive could not escape Hades' wrath. They would be hunted down and tormented by the Furies, 3 sisters from the underworld who would not stop until they had avenged the dead and driven their target insane. It would be the underworld they called home, resting here before their everlasting torment of the human soul began once again. Travelling across the underworld would also lay the fields of mourning, a resting place for those who had spent their life pursuing love, only to be rejected. The anguish they felt would condemn them to this dark and haunting forest, where they would forever mourn the love they never had. In the far corner of the underworld lay the Land of Dreams, an island only accessible to the gods of Olympus. Ruling over the island would be Morpheus, the god of dreams, who each night when all were asleep would, alongside his 2 brothers, control the dreams of not only mortals but the gods too, either granting them pleasant visions of the future or haunting them with the worst of nightmares. So powerful was Morpheus over the unconscious mind that he would be used to name the drug morphine, a pain medication renowned for sending its users to sleep. The true seat of power, however, did not rest in the Land of Dreams, for the underworld had only one ruler, the mighty Hades, who lived in a grand palace deep within the earth. Hidden away on an island engulfed by fire, those who searched for his home without an invitation would become lost in the dark and winding halls of the dead. But while the underworld was filled with punishment, Hades and Persephone were not cruel rulers, and would take pity on mortals who found their way to their kingdom. Orpheus, a famed musician and poet, had fallen in love with the beautiful Eurydice, but on their wedding day, Eurydice would be killed by a snakebite, with Orpheus left alone in despair, Grieving and desperate to see his wife once again, he would decide to travel to the underworld to retrieve her. Arriving at the river Styx, he would take out his lyre and play a beautiful song for Charon, who was so moved that he ferried Orpheus across the water for free. Upon reaching the other side, he would be confronted by Cerberus, with the tune he played so sweet that the three-headed dog would be lulled into a deep sleep. Finally, he would reach the palace of Hades and Persephone, playing for them a song about his lost love Eurydice. With tears welling in his eyes, Hades would take pity on Orpheus and agree to release her soul, but only on the condition that Orpheus refrained from laying his eyes upon her until they were both out of the underworld. Overjoyed, Orpheus would agree, and began to lead his bride through the dark and winding halls of the dead. But as he neared the surface, and the daylight shone upon his face, he would be overcome by excitement, turning around to look at his wife. But Orpheus had not yet completed the journey, and so, as his eyes fell upon her, Eurydice would be dragged back down into the realm of death, never to return. It was a lesson to learn in the virtues of patience and restraint, for if Orpheus had resisted temptation when his goal was so close, Eurydice, the love of his life, would have been with him once again. With the gods having established control over the world and the realm of the dead, the heroic age would soon begin.
As you all know, we're constantly looking for new tech developments to talk about on the pod. We are talking about the new AI-infused web browser, Octa. Look, this might sound dramatic.
With warriors from across the land embarking on great adventures that would become legend. The first in this generation of heroes would be Cadmus. The brother of Europa, Cadmus would spend many months searching the land for his sister, but as she had been abducted by Zeus, her location would be impossible to find. Desperate for information, Cadmus would make his way to the Oracle of Delphi, but she would inform him that his sister was lost forever, and not to dwell on her absence. Instead, she would tell Cadmus the gods had special plans for him, and that he was to follow a sacred cow, and found a city upon the place where it came to rest. Following the oracle's instructions, Cadmus would find the cow nearby, following it for days into the region of Boeotia, where it would finally lay down to rest. Upon that very spot, he would found the city of Thebes, which would become one of the greatest cities of ancient Greece, rivaling the likes of Athens and Sparta for power and influence. To sanctify the city and receive blessings from the gods, Cadmus intended to sacrifice the sacred cow to Athena, a ceremony that required water from a nearby spring. But when Cadmus sent his companions to collect the water, they would find the spring guarded by a ferocious dragon, who slew them as they tried desperately to escape. Hearing screams, Cadmus would run to the spring, only to find the dragon devouring his friends. Taking a spear, he would lunge forward and impale the beast, with the dragon unleashing a terrible scream as it took its last and final breath. Little did Cadmus know that the dragon was sacred to Ares, and that by killing it, he had committed a crime against the god of war. Ares would spare his life, but would force Cadmus to serve him as a slave for 8 years before his actions could be forgiven. But for Ares, his troubles would not only be confined to earth, for on Mount Olympus, Hephaestus, the god of smithing, had discovered one of Ares' deepest secrets. Hephaestus was married to Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, but Aphrodite had not been faithful, having an affair with Ares. The romance had lasted many years, with Aphrodite secretly bearing Ares a child called Harmonia. When she came of age and Cadmus had finished his many years of service, Ares was so impressed by his devotion that he would offer his daughter Harmonia to Cadmus as a bride. Hosting a great wedding celebration in Thebes, the two would wed, with all the gods of Olympus happy for their marriage bar one. For Hephaestus, having just found out his wife had had an illegitimate child, would present Harmonia with a cursed wedding gift, a beautiful necklace that would bring misfortune to any family who possessed it. Unaware of the curse the necklace contained, Cadmus and Harmonia would go on to rule the city of Thebes for many years, enjoying a long life and having 5 children, 4 daughters and 1 son. Yet soon, the curse of Harmonia's necklace would bring ruin to the house of Cadmus. Their youngest daughter Selene would be the first to suffer tragedy. Having spent a night with Zeus, Selene would fall pregnant with the god Dionysus, but the cursed necklace would soon bring about misfortune, with Selene bursting into flames when she saw Zeus's true form. Her sister Ino would also suffer misfortune, with her husband Athamas going insane and killing their children, with Ino herself jumping to her death while trying to escape him. The third daughter of Cadmus, Agave, would give birth to a son named Pentheus, who would become the second king of Thebes after Cadmus decided to retire in his old age. But Pentheus would make a deadly mistake, deciding to ban the worship of his divine cousin Dionysus in the city. In revenge, Dionysus would drive all the women of Thebes into a frenzy, who would tear Pentheus limb from limb, with his own mother Agave ripping off his head while under Dionysus' spell. And finally, Autonoe, the last daughter of Cadmus and Harmonia, would be the mother to the hunter Actaeon, who would be transformed into a deer and devoured by his own hunting dogs after he accidentally saw the goddess Artemis bathing in the forest. With the necklace of Harmonia being passed from generation to generation, the curse of the house of Cadmus would continue, with each new descendant suffering misfortune. However, the necklace's curse would torment one man in particular, Oedipus, the 7th king of Thebes, whose tragic story would bring tears to the eyes of all who heard it. King Laius, Queen Jocasta of Thebes, Oedipus would face hardship from the very beginning of his life. His father Laius, the city's 6th king, had consulted the Oracle of Delphi about the future of his lineage, but the prophecy he received would not be to his liking, as it was foretold that he would die at the hands of his son. And so, when his first son was born, Laius would bind his feet, hanging the boy on the branch of a tree to die. But a shepherd would soon stumble across the helpless child, retrieving him from the tree and taking him home to safety. As the child's ankles had been damaged, he would name the infant Oedipus, meaning swollen foot. Wanting the best for the child, the shepherd would deliver Oedipus to the king and queen of Corinth, good people who could not conceive a child of their own. Oedipus would experience a happy upbringing in Corinth, but as he reached manhood, he would begin to wonder about his true parentage. Making his way to the Oracle of Delphi, he would ask who his true parents were. In reply, the Oracle only warned him to stay away from his homeland, otherwise he was destined to kill his father and marry his mother. Horrified by the prophecy, and believing that it referred to his foster parents, the king and queen of Corinth, Oedipus vowed never again to return to the city. Instead, he would travel to Thebes, which, unknown to Oedipus, was the true land of his birth. On the road to Thebes, Oedipus would come to a narrow junction, where a large chariot blocked his way. But the chariot's passenger, an impatient man, would speed past Oedipus, knocking him off the road while hitting him on the head with a stick. Furious, Oedipus would chase after the chariot, killing all those on board, including the elderly man who had struck him. Unknown to Oedipus, he had already begun to fulfill the prophecy, as the old man lying dead at his feet was none other than his true father, King Laius. Continuing his journey, Oedipus would reach the gates of Thebes, only to discover that the city was plagued by a monster, the Sphinx, sent there by Hera to punish the city for the crimes of its kings. With the head of a woman, the body of a lion, and the wings of a bird, the Sphinx would ask anyone wishing to enter or leave the city a simple riddle. What animal has 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? None yet had solved the riddle, and those who failed would be killed and eaten by the Sphinx. The rulers of Thebes were so desperate to get rid of the creature that they offered the throne to anyone who could kill it. Approaching the monster, Oedipus would be asked the riddle, with the Sphinx eagerly waiting for yet another kill. But after thinking long and hard, Oedipus would finally give his answer: man. For in the morning, man is a child, crawling around on all fours. Then, at noon, in the prime of his life, man walks on just 2 legs. And finally, in the evening of his life, man walks with the aid of a 3rd leg, a walking stick, to help him keep balance. Shocked by her defeat, the Sphinx would jump off a tall rock to her death, with Oedipus entering the city of Thebes as a hero. Being crowned king for ridding the city of the Sphinx, he would also be gifted the recently widowed Queen Jocasta as his wife, with the two having 7 children together. But unknown to Oedipus, he had just married his own mother, with the prophecy now complete. The two would live happily together for a time, but it was not to last, with the gods casting a plague upon Thebes as punishment for the crimes of patricide and incest that Oedipus was still unaware he had committed. With the plague getting worse by the day, the shepherd that had saved Oedipus as a child would finally reveal to him his true identity. Horrified by the revelation that she had married her own son, Queen Jocasta would hang herself, with Oedipus soon finding her body. Overcome by grief at the death of his mother and wife, Oedipus would take the golden brooches from her robe and blind himself with their sharp pins. Disgusted by the revelation of his identity, the people of Thebes would exile Oedipus, with only his daughter Antigone choosing to accompany him. Blind and poor, he would spend his remaining years wandering the land as a beggar, with all those he encountered hurling abuse at him for his crimes. The only comfort he received was knowing his daughter was by his side, with Oedipus dying an old man, having realized that no mortal can outrun their fate. His story would resonate throughout the ages, inspiring the works of Sigmund Freud, whose Oedipus complex would propose that every young boy would lust for their mother, while feeling resentment towards their father, much as Oedipus had. But although the House of Cadmus was the first great heroic family, a new line of heroes would soon emerge. For there was another kingdom that sat between the great cities of Athens and Sparta, Argos, ruled by King Acrisius. But Acrisius had been informed of a terrible prophecy by the Oracle of Delphi, warning him that his grandson, soon to be born, was destined to murder him. It would not be long until Zeus, having seen the king's daughter Danae, would be struck by her beauty, sneaking into her room as a shower of gold.
यदि ऑटोमेटेड ट्रेडिंग सीखनी है तो ये वीडियो पूरा देखो। तो ये जो सॉफ्टवेयर है ये मेरे लैपटॉप पे।
With the gold falling upon her, Danae would fall pregnant, soon giving birth to a son. A son she would name Perseus. But King Acrisius, terrified that the prophecy was coming true, and not able to kill his daughter and grandchild, would banish them from his kingdom, locking them in a chest and letting it drift out to sea. Travelling for many days and nights at sea, they would soon arrive upon the shores of Seriphos, where they would be discovered by the fisherman Dictys. Dictys would raise the boy as his own, with Perseus soon reaching manhood on the island. But not all would be well, for the fisherman's brother, King Polydectes, had noticed the beauty of Danae and desired her as his wife, but she was always protected by her son Perseus, who never left her side. Wanting to have Danae to himself, King Polydectes would look to find a way to get rid of Perseus, with an opportunity soon presenting itself. Hosting a great feast, Polydectes would invite guests from across the island, with each man expected to bring a horse in tribute. But Perseus, having no money to his name, and possessing great speed and strength, instead boasted he could easily deliver the king a greater gift, the head of Medusa. It was the opportunity Polydectes had been waiting for, with him ordering Perseus to connect with him. Not expecting the king to take up his offer, Perseus would set out in despair, having only heard the terrifying tales of the creature that awaited him. But Medusa had not always been a terrifying creature. The daughter of the sea god's four-season Ceto, Medusa was one of 3 sisters, renowned for their unrivaled beauty. The only mortal sister, Medusa would also be the most beautiful, with any man that set eyes on her immediately falling in love. But despite this, Medusa would dedicate her life to Athena, the goddess of war and wisdom, taking a vow of celibacy so she could serve as her priestess. However, one day while she was walking by the sea, the god Poseidon would be struck by her beauty, following her back to Athena's temple, where he would force himself upon her. Furious at the act performed in her sacred temple, and not able to turn her rage upon her powerful uncle Poseidon, Athena would instead place the blame upon Medusa for allowing herself to be defiled and breaking her vow of celibacy. Wielding the power of the gods, she would curse Medusa, distorting her once beautiful features into a hideous visage. Where her long and flowing hair had once been was now a tangled web of snakes, and where her eyes had once seduced any man, would now turn those who looked upon them to stone. But Medusa's sisters who came to her defence would not escape Athena's wrath, with each of them transforming into hideous creatures, with the 3 sisters becoming known as the Gorgons. Exiled from their homeland, the 3 sisters would find a new home in North Africa, but their troubles would soon continue, as warriors from across the world would come to hunt them for sport. As the years went on and their loneliness continued, the hate they felt for the outside world would begin to grow, with Medusa and her sisters killing any who came near. With Perseus having set out to slay Medusa, both Athena and Hermes would soon approach him, offering aid, with Hermes gifting Perseus an indestructible sword, and Athena giving him an exquisite shield, so polished that he could see his own reflection. Knowing he would need more items to defeat Medusa, Perseus would next seek the help of the nymphs, forest deities that tended to the garden of the Hesperides. Soon finding the nymphs, Perseus would ask for their assistance, with them gifting him a pair of winged sandals, Hades' hat of invisibility, and an enchanted bag which could safely contain Medusa's head. Following the nymph's directions, he would use his winged sandals to fly to North Africa, where Medusa's cave was located. Sneaking into the cave, Perseus soon came across Medusa, sleeping amongst the stone corpses of her victims. Using the reflection in his shield, Perseus was careful not to look directly at her, with her gaze able to turn any man to stone. Seeing only her reflection, he would draw his sword and swiftly cut off her head, being careful not to look at her eyes as he placed it inside the enchanted bag. But to Perseus' surprise, from Medusa's body would spring Pegasus, a beautiful winged horse, Poseidon's child, who had been growing inside her all this time. Mounting Pegasus, Perseus would fly out of the cave and begin the journey home to Greece. Soaring across the ocean, Perseus would look down at the waves below, shocked to see a woman chained to a rock. The woman was the beautiful Andromeda, princess of the kingdom of Ethiopia, who had been placed there as an offering to the gods, in the hopes that her sacrifice would save the kingdom from the terrifying sea creature Cetus, who had been ravaging the shore in a holy war that came across. Captivated by Andromeda's beauty, Perseus would approach her parents, the king and queen of Ethiopia, offering to slay Andromeda's hand in marriage. Relieved, they would quickly accept, with Perseus flying over the monster with his winged sandals, slashing it with his sword until the beast was dead. Returning Andromeda to the shore, the queen would honour her word, giving Perseus her blessing, with the two soon marrying. With his new bride in hand, the pair would mount Pegasus, flying back to the island of Seriphos, where Perseus' mother awaited. But things were not as Perseus had left them. His mother, Danae, had continued to reject the advances of the king, but without Perseus there to protect her, she was forced into hiding. Having seen that King Polydectes had turned to violence to gain his mother as a bride, Perseus would fly down to the palace in anger, with the king's guards drawing their swords.
The reason behind your overthinking is your brain is caught. Hi, I'm Dr. Make Prediction.
Taking Medusa's head from his bag, Perseus would hold it out before him, turning the soldiers to stone. Panicking, the king ran for his spear, but it was too late, with Perseus holding Medusa's head before him, forever immortalizing his terrified expression in stone. Finally reunited, Danae would embrace her son, thankful that she would no longer have to live in fear. Leaving the island behind them, Perseus, Andromeda and Danae would decide to return to Argos, the place of Perseus's birth, where his grandfather, Acrisius, still ruled as king. But before he left, Perseus would return his gifts to the gods, with Athena taking Medusa's severed head and placing it on her shield, a form of punishment for her former priestess, with it remaining a symbol of Athena's dominance and power. Returning to Argos, Perseus was hailed as a hero for slaying Medusa, with all the townspeople encouraging him to join a local athletics tournament where he could compete against some of the strongest men in Greece. With the event underway and Perseus dominating the competition, it would soon be his turn to throw the discus. Spinning with all his might, Perseus would forget his own strength, with the discus flying off into the crowd, killing a member of the audience. Running over to the body, he discovered that it was none other than his grandfather, King Acrisius, lying dead on the floor, the discus having struck him on the head. And so, just as the prophecy had predicted so many years ago, King Acrisius had died at the hands of his grandson, a lesson that no mortal can run from their fate. But having shed the blood of a family member, something that was deeply frowned upon and considered one of the worst crimes in ancient Greek society, Perseus was no longer able to stay in Argos. Instead, he would found his own kingdom, Mycenae, north of Argos and west of Athens, which would soon become the most powerful city in Greece. Its great walls were constructed with massive boulders, too large for any man to lift alone, with Perseus enlisting the help of the mighty Cyclopses, whose craftsmanship was unrivaled. Ruling over the city, Perseus and Andromeda would have many children together, with their family's reign lasting for generations to come. But unknown to them, one of their descendants would become the most famous hero of them all. For the son of Zeus and Alcmene would be the great hero Heracles, whose famous 12 labours would echo throughout every corner of the world. But for all his fame and glory, Heracles' beginnings hold some of the most tragic and sad tales of all Greek myth. As Zeus sat on his throne on Mount Olympus, he looked down upon the world, with the beautiful Alcmena, the grandchild of Perseus, catching his eye. Descending to earth, Zeus would lay with Alcmena, with her soon falling pregnant with a son named Heracles, later known as Hercules to the Romans, with Zeus planning to make his son the next great king of Greece. But little did he know that his wife Hera, the queen of the gods, had been watching these events unfold. In the past she had sat idle, while Zeus had fathered many illegitimate children, but this time she had finally had enough. When Zeus swore an oath to give kingship to the next descendant of Perseus, thinking it would be his son Heracles, Hera saw an opportunity to get revenge on her husband. When Heracles was about to be born, she used her magic to delay the birth, while also speeding up the birth of another descendant of Perseus, a child called Eurystheus. As Eurystheus had been born just mere seconds before Heracles, he had become the next descendant of Perseus, with Zeus being forced to give him the kingship instead. While Zeus could do nothing about his son's lost kingdom, he did manage to get his own revenge on Hera. After Heracles was born, Zeus brought him up to Hera's bedchamber on Olympus. As she was sleeping, Zeus placed the infant on Hera's breast, where Heracles was able to feed on the goddess's milk, stealing some of her divine power for himself. Startled, Hera woke up and threw the baby off her chest, with her milk spraying across the heavens. This milk would settle out in space, becoming known as the Milky Way. Zeus chuckled to himself and brought Heracles back to Earth, placing him in a crib next to his mother. Back on Olympus, Hera was furious. This was too great an embarrassment for her to ignore, and so, in an attempt to kill Heracles, she sent 2 snakes into his crib. To her surprise, Heracles just giggled and grabbed a snake in each hand, strangling them with the strength he had just stolen from her. Hera looked down at the scene in rage, vowing to make Heracles' life as difficult as possible. Growing up, Heracles received an education from some of the most renowned masters of Greece. In all things from archery to music, one thing that became clear from a young age was that Heracles had a very short temper. This, combined with his supernatural strength, made him dangerous to both his friends and enemies alike. Linus, his music teacher, found this out the hard way when he was teaching the young hero to play an instrument called the lyre. Heracles lacked the finesse to play the instrument and became infuriated by the constant corrections of his teacher. After some particularly harsh criticism, he ended up smashing Linus on the back of the head with the instrument, killing him instantly. While Heracles only received a minor punishment, his temper would go on to cause him many issues in his later life. Upon reaching manhood, Heracles would marry the Theban princess Megaera, with the pair having 3 children together. However, Heracles' good fortune was not looked upon favourably by Hera, who still harboured resentment for her husband's illegitimate son. Not only was he now married, but he was also in line to become the next king of Thebes. Hera would now act on the vow she had taken all those years ago. Heracles' happiness could not continue. Heracles, completely oblivious to the scheming of Hera, came home one day to find his door broken down. Running inside, he found that his family were nowhere to be seen. When he cried out to them, several hideous monsters appeared from the back of the house and began to crawl towards him. Finding himself overcome with an unnatural rage, Heracles lashed out at the monsters, killing one with a powerful strike to the head. The other monsters began to run away in fear, but Heracles, now in a blind rage, would not allow any to escape, chasing them down one by one, before killing them with his bare hands. It was only then that Hera dispelled her magic, lifting her illusion from Heracles' eyes. The hero watched in horror as the monsters transformed back into their original form. His own family now lay dead before him. He frantically shook their bodies, trying to wake them up, tears flooding from his eyes. But it was too late. Hera's magic had done its job, and he would now forever live with the guilt of having murdered his own wife and children. As Heracles looked down at his blood-stained hands, he realized he would have to atone for his crimes. The murder of a family member was considered one of the most serious crimes in ancient Greece, and if Heracles did not atone for his crimes, then the Furies would hunt him down and torture him for eternity. The only person he knew that could give him guidance was the famous Oracle of Delphi, and so he exiled himself from his home in Thebes and started his journey of redemption. The Oracle of Delphi was the mouthpiece of Apollo, able to deliver prophecies and guidance from the god. On this occasion, however, Hera managed to use her magic to influence some of the Oracle's words. When Heracles asked what he should do to atone for his crimes, the Oracle responded that he had to serve King Eurystheus of Mycenae for 10 years, who was the descendant of Perseus that had been born just mere seconds before Heracles. Understanding his task, Heracles bowed to the oracle, stood up, and began his long voyage to Mycenae. King Eurystheus had known of Heracles for some time and was deeply jealous of him. The two were cousins, as they shared descent from Perseus. However, they were nothing alike. Heracles was strong and heroic, whereas Eurystheus was cowardly and weak, often sending others to fight his battles for him. Arriving in servitude, Heracles bowed before his cousin Eurystheus, who could barely contain his joy. Quickly accepting Heracles' service, the king instructed him to carry out 10 labours over a period of 10 years, only after which he would be forgiven for his crimes. There was only one caveat, however. These labours would have to be completed without any assistance or payment. Heracles hung his head in shame, asking what his first labour would be. King Eurystheus told him of a ferocious lion that had been terrorising a village in the northeast part of his kingdom named Nemea. The lion could not be stopped. Its golden hide was impervious to weapons, and its claws were sharper than any sword known to man. It had killed all those sent against it, and the task would now lay with Heracles, who was sent to slay the beast. Aware that no sword or spear could penetrate the lion's hide, Heracles trained for several months, uprooting trees and lifting giant boulders to increase his strength. Stronger than ever, he could now confront the beast with his bare hands. Upon arriving at the lion's den, Heracles passed the bodies of warriors, their swords and axes shattered on the floor. The lion then appeared and began to charge towards him, but just before it was about to pounce, Heracles stepped to the side, catching its neck in his arms. The two wrestled for hours, but when Heracles managed to get a good grasp on the lion's throat, he squeezed with all his might until he heard a crack. The dead beast fell down on the floor. His first labour was complete. Realizing the lion's pelt would aid him in his upcoming labours, he pulled out one of its razor-sharp claws, using it to skin the animal. He then threw the pelt around his shoulders like a cloak, using the lion's head as a protective hood. As Heracles left the lair, he found a giant oak tree, which he lifted from the ground and stripped of its branches, whittling it into a club. This would be his new weapon, and the lion his new armour.
How to get the $2,000 browser for free. Download Comet right now. That's it. No credit card, no wait list. Here's what makes it different from every...
Symbols of his path to redemption. As Heracles returned to Mycenae, draped in the pelt of the Nemean lion, Eurystheus was shocked, never imagining his cousin would make it back alive. For his second labour, Heracles was sent to kill the Lemnian Hydra, and so he travelled to Lake Lerna near the city of Argos, where the famous water serpent had made its home. Known as the Hydra, the beast had 9 heads, one of which was immortal, with its blood the most poisonous substance known to man. Upon his journey to face the creature, however, Hera wanted to make the challenge more difficult, hiding a giant crab within the lake. When Heracles arrived, he charged at the Hydra with his club, with a massive swing taking one of its heads clean off. But to his horror, where one head had been, 2 new heads emerged in its place. Confused, Heracles began to cut off more heads, but this would only make the situation worse, as each time one head was removed, 2 more would spawn. As he was grappling with the beast, Hera's giant crab would jump out of the water, pinning Heracles to the ground. With the 2 monsters attacking him, Heracles was sure that his death was close. But as the Hydra moved towards him, an arrow flew out of the bushes and struck it in the side. Heracles turned around to see his nephew, Iolaus, aiming a bow at the monster. The boy had followed his uncle to the lake, hoping to help in any way he could. With the monsters distracted, Heracles reached for his club, swinging it with such force that he crushed the giant crab in a single blow. With his nephew now by his side, as Heracles sliced off a head, Iolaus would then cauterize the Hydra's neck with a flaming torch, preventing any more heads from growing. The pair worked together for hours, slicing and cauterizing, until finally no more heads remained. Heracles then knelt beside the Hydra's body, dipping the tip of his arrows in its poisonous blood. The slightest scratch from one of these arrows would prove fatal, something that would aid him in his upcoming labours. Despite defeating the Hydra, Eurystheus did not count this labour, as Heracles had been assisted by his nephew Iolaus, and therefore an additional 11th labour would have to be completed. As Heracles and Iolaus left the lake, to thank the crab for its service, Hera took its remains and cast its image up into the heavens, creating the constellation Cancer. For his 3rd labour, Heracles was ordered to catch the Saronian hind and bring it back alive to Eurystheus. The hind was a beautiful creature, much like a stag, with bronze-like hooves and a magnificent pair of golden antlers. Heracles then set off to Mount Saronia, where the creature lived, but the hind was extremely fast, being nearly impossible to catch, with Heracles chasing his prey for a full year before he was able to capture it. Infuriated that his cousin had completed the task so easily, Eurystheus would quickly set Heracles his 4th labour, to capture the Erymanthian boar. his fourth labour, Eurystheus sent Heracles to Mount Erymanthus to capture alive a giant boar that had been ravaging the area. Not thinking much of the task, Heracles set off with enthusiasm, even deciding to visit his friend, the centaur Pholus, along the way. Centaurs were half men, half horse creatures, renowned for acting more like beasts than humans. Pholus was an exception, however, being both friendly and intelligent, and had been friends with Heracles since his youth. After Heracles arrived, Pholus decided to host a dinner party to honour his guest, inviting a few of the local centaurs, one of whom was Heracles' old, intelligent, and immortal archery teacher Chiron. As the feast began, everything was going well, with Heracles reminiscing with his old teacher before deciding to take a walk. On the way out, he came across a jar of wine on Pholus' shelf, which he decided to crack open and take a large helping of. Little did he know that the wine was communal property of all the centaurs, something the god Dionysus had gifted them 4 generations earlier. The wine also had a powerful odour that the centaurs could smell for miles around. As Heracles returned, he was confronted by a huge crowd of centaurs, demanding to know why he had drunk their sacred wine. His friends Pholus and Chiron tried to calm down the other centaurs, but the situation soon got out of hand, as the whole tribe had arrived, drawn by the wine's odour. Enraged, the centaurs tried to kill Heracles, but despite their numbers, they were unable to overpower him. In defence, Heracles began shooting them with his arrows coated in the poisonous hydra blood, killing many, with the rest then fleeing. Unfortunately, in the chaos, Heracles had accidentally shot his old teacher Chiron, who fell down screaming in agony. As he was immortal, the wounds did not kill him, but with the hydra's poison coursing through his veins, he would spend an eternity in pain. Zeus, however, had watched the events unfold.
गार्नियर बाहर चली इतनी धूप में नया गार्नियर सनस्क्रीन है ना with SPF 50 plus and vitamin C जो भी sun protection और inter freshness
And decided to take pity on the old centaur, taking Chiron's spirit and casting it up into the heavens, creating the constellation Sagittarius. Confused as to how such a small arrow had killed the other centaurs, Pholus picked an arrow up from the ground. But as he brought it to his face to take a closer look, the arrow slipped from his fingers, landing on his hoof, with the poison killing him within seconds. After chasing the other centaurs away, Heracles returned, but when he found out he had killed both his friend and his teacher, he was overcome with shame and regret. But unknown to Heracles, a centaur called Nessus was able to survive the massacre, running far into the mountains, where he would spend over a decade planning his revenge on the hero. Heracles completed his actual labour with ease, chasing the boar into deep snow, where he bound it in chains to bring back to Eurystheus. Upon seeing the giant monster, Eurystheus was petrified, quickly jumping into a large storage jar, refusing to come out until Heracles removed the boar from the room. Heracles could barely hide his amusement, but did as he was told and set the boar free. King Eurystheus then crawled out of the jar in embarrassment, and quickly sent Heracles off on his 5th labour. For his 5th labour, Heracles was tasked to clean up Gene's stable day, using only his hands and without any assistance. Eurystheus believed the task to be impossible, sending Heracles on his way, believing failure was certain. The stables belonged to King Orgeus from the neighbouring kingdom of Elis. They housed 3,000 immortal cattle and had not been cleaned for nearly 30 years. The stables were so overrun with animal dung that in some places the filth had piled 7 metres high, and no one dared approach them due to the awful smell. Upon arriving in Elis, Heracles visited King Orgeus, who promised the hero 1/10 of the immortal herd as a reward if he was able to clean the stables before nightfall. As he made his way over to the stables, Heracles was bombarded with a horrid smell. It was even larger and more filthy than he had imagined, spanning the length of a small city. After taking a look around, Heracles himself thought the task impossible to complete. He instead headed to the nearby rivers Alpheus and Peneus, which he hoped would do the job for him. Obeying the restrictions Eurystheus had given him, Heracles used no tools, instead using his bare hands to dig a canal which flowed from the rivers down into the stables. Once completed, a great torrent of water came flooding into the stables, washing away years of filth in an instant. The water continued to flow into the surrounding farmland, fertilizing the fields with an enormous amount of manure. This caused celebration in Elis, with people cheering for Heracles as their farms were to prosper for years to come. Heracles would mark this occasion by creating the famous Olympic Games, which would occur every 4 years in Elis. But not all was well, as Eurystheus would refuse to count this labour as one of the 10, as he claimed the task had been accomplished for payment in the form of a portion of the immortal herd. An additional labour would therefore have to be added to his service, bringing the new total to now 12 labours. For his 6th labour, Heracles was tasked with driving away a flock of man-eating birds from lakes and flowers. These birds were sacred to Ares and sported iron beaks, capable of tearing through the toughest of armour. The birds were the size of herons and excreted poisonous droppings, rendering the surrounding area uninhabitable. Upon arriving, Heracles would find a pair of giant bronze rattles that had been placed on the fallen trunk of a willow tree by Athena. Thanking the goddess for her aid, Heracles would begin to shake the rattles, with the noise they produced causing the birds enormous pain, with hundreds of them rising from the lake, forming a great flock above. Heracles then took his aim, shooting down as many as he could, until finally those that had survived fled the lake, with his 6th labour now complete. When King Eurystheus saw his cousin returning successfully yet again, he realized that he had exhausted all of the difficult tasks in his kingdom. Needing more time to come up with one, he sent Heracles to Crete, an island near the Greek mainland, where King Minos would give him his next labour. King Minos had been gifted a beautiful white bull from the sea god Poseidon, with the expectation that he would sacrifice the bull in Poseidon's honour. Instead of doing this, however, King Minos decided to keep the bull for himself, thinking it too beautiful to kill. In revenge, Poseidon made the king's wife fall in love with the bull, with this union eventually leading to the birth of the half-man, half-bull creature known as the Minotaur, a creature that King Minos kept in a labyrinth beneath his palace. After the bull impregnated the king's wife, Poseidon turned it mad, with the bull running around Crete, destroying everything in its path. While Heracles was not destined to kill the Minotaur beneath the palace,
তবে থেকে আমরা বিয়ে ঠিক হয়েছে, তবে থেকে আমার বন্ধুরা আমাকে বলছে আমাদের কাউকে একটু খুঁজে দেয় না। বেঙ্গলি সাথী.com আছে তো, ওরা এই বিষয়ে খুব কনফিডেন্ট। নিজের মনের মতো পার্টনার 30 দিনে না পেলে মানি ব্যাক গ্যারেন্টি। বেঙ্গলি সাথী.com ডাউনলোড না।
भाई तू कैसे क्रैक करा कि डीएसए इंटरव्यू? अरे ब्रो सिंपल है, मैंने पूरा डीएसए लीड कोड एआई के साथ पढ़ा। रोज सिर्फ 2 लीड कोड क्वेश्चंस और
that was a task destined for the hero Theseus. King Minos did want Heracles to capture the mad bull that was causing havoc in his kingdom. Accepting the challenge, Heracles went to confront the bull, and when the beast charged at him, Heracles would grab it by the horns and wrestle its head into the ground. After many hours had passed, the exhausted bull would finally submit, with Heracles then jumping on its back, as the bull was a child of Poseidon and could walk on water, until Heracles would ride it across the seas to Mycenae to show Eurystheus proof of his achievement. With his task complete and not wanting to kill an animal sacred to Poseidon, Heracles released the bull outside of the palace, where it went on to rampage the Greek mainland until it was finally, many years later, caught and killed by the hero Theseus. His 8th labour, Heracles was tasked with bringing Eurystheus the mares of the Thracian king Diomedes. These horses were fearsome creatures, known to breathe fire, with their aggression made worse by Diomedes feeding them the flesh of unsuspecting guests and strangers to his kingdom. As Heracles made his way to Thrace, he would be accompanied by his friend and lover Aorus, the son of Hermes. As they arrived, the pair made their way to the palace of Diomedes, where they witnessed the fire-breathing horses Heracles was tasked with collecting. The mares were bound to the palace with cast iron chains, put on display for all to see, thrashing around and foaming at the mouth. But as he entered the palace to meet with King Diomedes, a foul-looking man with a nauseous stench, Heracles would hear a terrible scream behind him. Rushing out to see what had happened, Heracles would watch in horror as the horses ripped into the corpse of his young lover Abderus, who had gotten too close to them in his curiosity. Filled with rage, Heracles charged back into the palace, killing the guards and grabbing Diomedes by the hair, dragging him outside. Giving the king a taste of his own medicine, Heracles threw Diomedes to the monsters, who began to devour their master. The flesh of Diomedes was so foul, that the horses stopped eating more halfway through, for it would put off the taste of human flesh. With the horses now docile, Heracles grabbed their chains and brought them back to Eurystheus, his task now complete. For his ninth labour, Heracles was tasked to retrieve the girdle of Hippolyta, a gold and leather belt that ensured victory in battle. It belonged to Hippolyta, the daughter of the war god Ares, and the queen of the Amazons, a race of warrior women who could fight better than almost any man, with their routinely raiding local tribes to assert their dominance. So Heracles set off east, bringing with him a small band of warriors in case he had to fight with the Amazons. However, on arrival, Heracles was surprised by the Amazons' hospitality, with Hippolyta herself taking a keen interest in him. Having heard of his famous labours and overcome by lust, Hippolyta would give him her girdle as a sign of her interest. But Hera, watching from Mount Olympus, could not believe her eyes. The task was going too well, and so to make sure this labour was more difficult, she decided to intervene. Disguising herself as an Amazon, she made her way into the camp, walking amongst the women and sowing seeds of distrust, slowly convincing the entire tribe that Heracles had come to enslave them. The Amazons became outraged, mounting their horses and charging towards the men they had let into their camp. Heracles heard the commotion and rushed outside, where he saw the Amazons slaughtering his friends. He turned around in a rage, thinking that Hippolyta had tricked him, keeping him away from his men so they could be slaughtered. Before the queen could explain, Heracles lifted his club and struck her dead, her girdle not protecting her, as she had already gifted it to him. Heracles then ran outside, striking down any Amazon who challenged him. He managed to save a small handful of his companions, and the group hastily left the camp, heading home to Mycenae. Eurystheus had grown tired of Heracles beating any task laid before him, and so decided to send him to the farthest place he could think of, the island of Erythea. For his 10th labour, Heracles was sent to Erythea to steal the cattle of a three-headed giant known as Geryon. Heading southwest, he travelled along the African coastline, but it did not take long for Heracles, unused to the intense and scorching heat of the continent, to become annoyed with the sun itself. Halfway across the Libyan desert, he took out his bow and threatened to shoot the sun with one of his poisoned arrows if it continued to torment him. Quite distressed at this, the sun came down in his human form as the god Helios, begging Heracles not to shoot him. He promised to shine less intensely while Heracles was on his journey, also offering to give the hero his great golden cup, a vessel shaped like a water lily, that Helios himself used to sail around the ocean in at night. Finally reaching the island of Erythea, Heracles was quick to see the herd of cattle he had to steal, along with Geryon, their giant three-headed owner, but wanting to be done with his task as quickly as possible.
Dark spots. ওটা স্ক্রিনে আছে ম্যাডি ফেসে শুধু ন্যাচারালি অন স্পট করে নিজের ন্যাচারাল
Heracles didn't even bother to fight the giant, instead shooting Geryon with a poisoned arrow, killing him within seconds. Heracles then herded the cattle into Helios's cup and sailed home to Mycenae, where he delivered them to Eurystheus. For his 11th labour, Heracles was tasked with travelling to the garden of the Hesperides, the daughters of the night, and collecting the golden apples that grew on a tree there. which granted immortality to anyone who ate them. Not only was the location of the garden unknown, but Hera had sent a 100-headed dragon called Ladon to guard the tree from which the apples grew. As Heracles set off to find the mythical garden, he first visited the Titan Prometheus, who he thought would know of its location. Prometheus, the creator of mankind, had been chained to the side of a mountain after stealing the fire of the gods to save humanity, and by the time Heracles found him, this cycle of punishment had been going on for centuries. Taking pity on Prometheus, Heracles broke his chains and set the Titan free, finally bringing an end to his torment, with Prometheus then happily sharing the garden's location. However, he also warned Heracles that no mortal could pick the golden apples from the tree. Instead, he suggested that Heracles seek help from the Titan Atlas, as he lived near the garden. Following Prometheus's advice, Heracles would seek out Atlas, who was not difficult to find due to the Titan's immense size. Atlas had fought against the Olympians in the war between the gods and the Titans, but as he was defeated, Zeus forced him to hold up the sky for eternity as punishment. Approaching the Titan, Heracles explained his situation and offered to make a trade. He would temporarily hold up the sky and give Atlas a much-needed break, and in exchange, Atlas would collect the golden apples. Thankful to be free of his burden, even for a short time, Atlas accepted the deal and went to collect the apples, transferring the weight of the heavens onto the shoulders of Heracles. Though he had achieved the impossible before, even Heracles struggled to bear the immense weight he now had to hold. As time went on, his muscles began to cramp, his body began to shake, and he contemplated whether this would be the task that would finally break him. As the sun began to set, Atlas finally returned with a basket full of golden apples. With a grunt of relief, Heracles thanked the Titan, moving to give him back the sky, but not wanting to take it back. Atlas offered to take the apples to Eurystheus himself, promising he would return and bear the weight of the sky once more. But Heracles would not be fooled. He thanked the Titan for his generous offer to deliver the apples, and offered to hold the sky for a little longer, but asked if Atlas would take the sky back, just for a moment, so he could put on his pelt to cushion his shoulders and head. Knowing the pelt would make a great difference, and none the wiser, Atlas placed the apples on the ground and took the sky back from Heracles. As soon as he was free, Heracles picked up the apples and bid Atlas farewell, quickly returning them to Eurystheus to complete his labour. Atlas was enraged, cursing at the hero as he left, with his roars shaking the ground for miles around. As decades passed, and then centuries, Atlas would become part of the world itself, being transformed into stone, with his giant remains becoming known as the Atlas mountain range of North Africa. For his 12th labour, Heracles was tasked with capturing Cerberus, the three-headed dog that guarded the gates of the underworld. Descending to the underworld and approaching Hades and Persephone, Heracles would explain that he had been tasked with collecting Cerberus as his final labour. Knowing that helping Heracles would infuriate Hera, who had always looked down on him, Hades allowed Cerberus to be taken, but two conditions had to be met. First, Heracles must use no weapons to capture Cerberus, and second, once his task was complete, Cerberus must be returned. Agreeing to the terms, Heracles set out to face the beast. Just as he had done with the Nemean lion and the Cretan bull before, Heracles grappled with the dog, wrestling it for hours until the beast was utterly exhausted. With his club in one hand and Cerberus in the other, he dragged the dog by its chains and made his way back to the realm of the living. Heracles then delivered Cerberus to King Eurystheus, who once again chose to cower in his jar, a now permanent installation next to his throne. The king poked his head out the top of the jar, and while shaking in fear, agreed to release Heracles from his servitude, granting him pardon for his past crimes. Heracles was filled with joy. He had finally atoned for his crimes and was to be a free man. But before embarking on his next journey, he fulfilled his promise and returned Cerberus to the land of the dead. Heracles took some time to celebrate when he returned, enjoying all the pleasures of a free life. He was now a well-renowned hero and had admirers wherever he went. He would go on several more adventures, even joining the hero Jason and the Argonauts on their quest for the Golden Fleece. Heracles soon found another lover, taking the beautiful Deianira as his wife. However, as the newlywed couple were making their way home in the city of Tiryns, they came across a rapid river that they had to pass. On the other bank stood a centaur, who made his way over and offered to carry Deianira across on his back. Heracles accepted the offer, not recognizing the centaur as Nessus, the sole survivor of the massacre Heracles had committed against the centaur tribe on his way to his fourth labour. Nessus had been plotting his revenge against Heracles for over a decade, with him now seeing the perfect opportunity to execute his plan. As soon as Nessus reached the other side of the river, he threw Deianira to the floor and attempted to violate her. Seeing this from the other bank, Heracles pulled out his bow and shot Nessus in the chest with a poisoned arrow, sending the centaur to the ground in agonizing pain. In his last breaths, Nessus apologized to Deianira and offered her a gift as a means of apology. He claimed that it had magic love properties, telling Deianira to discreetly collect it up in a vial in case Heracles ever fell in love with another woman. As Nessus finally died, Deianira collected up his blood, keeping it hidden in case she ever needed to win Heracles back. Little did she know that she had just begun the chain of events that would lead to the death of her husband. The couple lived happily in Tiryns for a time and had several children. However, after a few years, Heracles became tired of such a peaceful life and craved the action of his youth. Seeking some adventure, he left his family behind and set out to the kingdom of Orchelia, where his old archery tutor, Eurytus, ruled as king. Once he arrived, it only took a few days for Heracles to fall in love with the daughter of King Eurytus, a woman named Iole.
Introducing Grammarly, like you've never seen before. Your all-in-one writing essential.
Winning her affections, Heracles would take Iole home to the city of Tiryns, where his children and his wife Deianira were living. While Deianira was initially happy to see her husband return, she became worried when she saw him arrive with another woman, suspecting that he had been unfaithful. In her desperation to win Heracles back, Deianira retrieved the blood of the centaur Nessus that she had been hiding, hoping that its love properties would help her. She smeared the blood on a robe, which she then gifted to Heracles and asked him to wear to dinner that evening. When Heracles put on the robe later that evening, he immediately knew that something was wrong. Nessus's blood began to stick to his skin, causing a horrible burning sensation. Heracles began to scream in agony and tried to rip off the robe, tearing out large chunks of his flesh in the process. The centaur Nessus had planned this all along. He knew that Heracles would shoot him with a poisoned arrow when he attempted to attack Deianira, and by convincing her to gather his blood that was tainted with the Hydra poison, Nessus had craftily ensured that Heracles would suffer the same agonizing death that he'd inflicted on the other centaurs. Heracles' torment lasted for hours, with his wife Deianira hanging herself upon realizing that she had poisoned her husband. Knowing his death was close, Heracles frantically ran around his courtyard, ripping up trees to construct a funeral pyre. Once assembled, the hero lay down upon it and asked one of his friends to set it alight. As the fire seared through his skin and his body went up in flames, a smile appeared on Heracles' face as he was finally released from the horrific pain. It was at this moment a great storm cloud gathered around the funeral pyre. In the cloud sat Zeus, who watched as the mortal part of his son burnt away. The gods then grabbed Heracles' spirit, taking his son up to Olympus, where he transformed him into an immortal. From this point on, Heracles was worshipped as a god by the Greeks, with his labours becoming legend, with Zeus eventually casting his son up into the stars, where he can still be seen as a constellation to this day. While some heroes like Heracles had to earn their place on Olympus, others would become arrogant, with many mortal men who assumed themselves equal to the gods, often meeting a tragic end. The case with Bellerophon, the grandson of Sisyphus, the man cast to roll a boulder up a hill for eternity. Gifted the winged horse Pegasus by Poseidon, and learning to ride it with the help of Athena, Bellerophon would go on many great adventures. His most famous exploit would be his slaying of the fearsome Chimera, a fire-breathing monster with the head of a lion, the body of a goat, and a snake for a tail. But as Bellerophon's fame grew, so too did his ego. Believing he had earned the right to sit amongst the gods, he took Pegasus and began flying up to Mount Olympus. But this would anger Zeus. Not only did Bellerophon think himself an equal to the Olympians, but he was using Pegasus, a gift from the gods, to get there. And so, as Bellerophon neared the heavens, Zeus sent a gadfly to sting Pegasus, causing the horse to kick Bellerophon off his back. Although he would survive the fall, Bellerophon would be blinded when he landed in a thorn bush. Living the rest of his life in misery, he would wander the earth alone, serving as a warning to those who thought to compare themselves to the gods. Pegasus would complete the journey to Olympus, where he would be claimed by Zeus, with the winged horse proudly carrying the god's thunder and lightning on his back for the rest of time. With the adventures of Cadmus, Perseus, and Heracles having come to an end, the first age of heroes was drawing to a close. But with the children they had inspired with their stories now reaching manhood, a new generation of heroes would soon emerge, ready to forge their own legends and make their mark on the world. Jason and the Argonauts' quest for the Golden Fleece would become one of these great legends, with heroes from far and wide, all embarking on what would become one of the greatest stories in all mythology. Jason, the heir to the city of Iolcus, has been banished from his homeland as a child by his uncle Peleus, a ruthless tyrant who seized power and took the city by force, claiming the throne of Iolcus for himself. Jason would be raised by Chiron, the teacher of Heracles and other famous heroes, spending 20 years under his tutelage, learning the likes of athletics, speechcraft, and warfare. But as Jason reached manhood, and having learnt everything Chiron had to offer, he would set out to reclaim his stolen kingdom. Beginning the journey back to Iolcus, Jason would soon come across a river, its harsh current making it difficult to cross. On his side of the stream sat an old woman unable to pass, with Jason offering to carry her across on his back. But as he did so, the swift current would remove one of his sandals, with him forced to continue the journey with one foot bare. However, back in Iolcus, King Peleus, having just asked an oracle the way in which he would die, was advised to be wary of a man with one sandal. It was at this moment that Jason arrived at the palace, demanding that the kingdom be given to him. Seeing Jason was wearing only one sandal, and hearing the townspeople cheer his return, Peleus realized he could not simply have him killed, so instead came up with a devious plan. He would challenge Jason to retrieve the famous Golden Fleece from Colchis, an item said to be more valuable than anything else on Earth. If he was able to retrieve the fleece, Peleus promised to forfeit the kingdom, being certain that Jason would die along the way. With his honor on the line, Jason would accept Peleus's offer, but knowing of the dangers that lay ahead, would begin to gather the greatest heroes the world had ever seen. With word spreading of Jason's great quest, heroes from across the land soon flocked to Iolcus to join him on the adventure. The first to arrive would be Heracles, the great hero of the land, who offered his incredible strength and skill, having just completed his famous 12 labours. He would be joined by Zetes and Callias, sons of the North Wind, who each possessed a magnificent pair of wings that granted them the power of flight. Following close behind would be the warriors known as the Dioscuri, Castor and Pollux, the twin brothers of Helen of Troy. Also seeking adventure, Peleus, the father of the great hero Achilles and king of Phthia, would also join, with his elder brother Telamon, the king of Salamis, who had helped Heracles fight the Amazons during his 9th labour, accompanying his brother on the journey. The next to arrive would be the great heroes of the Caledonian Boar Hunt, an adventure still to come, with Euphemus, Meleager and Idas all excited to take part on their next adventure. And finally, the last to join would be Orpheus, the famous poet, whose beautiful singing was known throughout the land. It would only be after his journey with the Argonauts that his most famous story, the loss of his wife Eurydice, would come to pass. To transport these great heroes, Jason would enlist the help of the legendary shipbuilder Argus, who, with the help of Athena,
would create the Argo, the swiftest and most sturdy ship of its time. At its bow, Athena would place an enchanted piece of wood through which Jason could communicate with the gods. As they set sail and their great voyage began, Jason and his companions would name themselves the Argonauts after the ship, with the Greek translation of Argo meaning swift and naut meaning sailor.
As you all know, we're constantly looking for new tech developments to talk about on the pod. We are talking about the
Heading north, they would first arrive at the island of Lemnos, only to discover it was inhabited entirely by women. Many years ago, the women of the island had been devoted followers of Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. As their devotion to the goddess had begun to wane, with her temple falling into ruin. Outraged, Aphrodite would curse the women, causing them to emit a horrible stench, with each of their husbands choosing to sleep with their female slaves rather than spend time with their wives. The women, neglected and feeling betrayed by their husbands, would decide to murder every male inhabitant of the island, including every boy, with them spending many years alone until the Argonauts' arrival. Seeing the heroes arrive, Aphrodite would lift her curse, allowing the women to greet their new visitors. With the smell now gone, Aphrodite hoped that the women would fall pregnant, ensuring the survival of the island's inhabitants, with a new generation of children ready to worship her. Her plan would be successful, and after an entire year had passed, the Argonauts had still not left the island, with Heracles becoming enraged. Assembling his companions, Heracles would shame them for forgetting their quest, reminding the men that they would not become great and famed heroes if they did not retrieve the golden fleece. Hanging their heads in embarrassment, the Argonauts would return to the ship, with their journey soon resuming. Continuing east, the Argonauts would pass Troy, soon arriving at Ceos, so Heracles could replace his broken oar. However, Heracles' companion and servant Hylas, having wandered into the wilderness, had become lost in the depths of a vast forest. Hylas would soon stumble across a beautiful spring, stopping to quench his thirst and to wash his body. However, the spring was home to a group of water nymphs who, upon seeing the young man, the first man they had ever seen, would fall in love. Grabbing him by the arm, they would pull Hylas into the water, making him immortal and trapping him there for eternity. Heracles, wondering where his servant had gone, would go into the forest to look for him, but no matter how hard he looked, Hylas could not be found. After searching for days, Heracles would return to the shore, only to find that Jason and the Argonauts had set sail without him.
Get it?
They would next pass the kingdom of Thrace, before travelling through the clashing rocks, a waterway so dangerous that no ship had ever passed through before. Entering the Black Sea, Jason and his crew would finally lay their eyes upon Colchis, their final destination, where the Golden Fleece, the most valuable item known to man, was kept by King Aeetes. Arriving in his palace, Aeetes would show hospitality to the Argonauts, but would refuse to give up the fleece, knowing it was safe as it was guarded by the fearsome unchained dragon. Knowing that defeating the dragon was impossible even for Jason, Hera, queen of the gods, would now give him her aid. For long ago, Jason had carried an old woman across a river out of kindness, not knowing that she was none other than Hera, who had come down to earth in disguise. Hera would now repay the debt, making Medea, the beautiful daughter of King Aeetes, fall in love with Jason. Medea was a powerful witch and would offer Jason her aid, giving him a bundle of magical herbs that he could use to subdue the dragon. With the herbs in hand, Jason would put the beast to sleep before grabbing the golden fleece. Finally, with the fleece in his possession, Jason and the Argonauts would hastily retreat back to the ship, with Medea joining them on board as they made a quick escape.
As morning came, King Aeetes awoke to discover that the Golden Fleece had been taken, with him quickly assembling a fleet of ships to head out in pursuit. Leading the fleet would be Aeetes' son Aspertus, and it would not be long until he was close on their tail. Medea, seeing her brother Aspertus closing in on them, and knowing they could not outrun such a large fleet, would ask for the Argo to be halted, so she could bring her brother on board to discuss peace talks. But as Aspertus' ship came near, Medea would drag him on board, taking a knife from her robe and stabbing him in the chest. Dismembering the body, she would throw the remains of her brother piece by piece into the sea, so that her grieving father would have to stop the pursuit. With the time she had now bought, the Argonauts would look for a way to escape. Heading west, they would enter the Esports River, sailing for many weeks until they reached the Alps. Having come to a dead end, the Argonauts would come ashore, lifting up the ship to travel through the mountains by foot. Finally reaching the Rhodanus River, they would set sail once again, where this time they would enter the Mediterranean Sea. Setting sail, Jason and his men would begin to hear a beautiful melody, for his ship was passing the home of the Sirens, irresistible creatures that enticed sailors to their death with their bewitching songs. It was at this moment that Orpheus, the famous poet, would take out his lyre and begin to play his beautiful songs that would grow louder and louder as they drowned out the Sirens' call. Only when they had passed by safely would Orpheus put down his lyre, with all the men on board cheering and thanking him for saving their lives. Heading back to Greece, their next stop would be the island of Syria, home to the Phaeacians, a kind people who welcomed them with open arms. After facing so many dangers, they would rest on the island for a few weeks, with Jason and Medea hosting a great wedding during their time there. Now married, they would take to the sea once again, finally heading home to Greece. But as they neared close to home, the Argonauts would decide to take one final rest on the island of Crete. However, unknown to them, the island was home to Talos, a bronze giant that patrolled the shore 3 times each day, destroying any ship that approached. Powerless against the giant, the Argonauts would run in terror, with there being nowhere to hide on the beach. But Medea, using her magic, would soon be able to identify Talos' one weakness, a large bronze nail in the side of his ankle that prevented his divine blood from pouring out. Stopping the giant, Medea would tell Talos that she was a powerful witch and could make him immortal. The only thing he had to do was to carefully follow her instructions. Claiming that it was the nail in his foot that kept him from becoming immortal, and Talos, never having talked to a human, would be easily tricked, reaching down and pulling out the nail. With blood pouring out, Talos would fall down to the ground, never to torment travelers again. With the giant defeated, the Argonauts would board their ship, soon reaching the kingdom of Iolcus. After many years of travel, and with the golden fleece in hand, Jason was finally ready to reclaim his homeland. Arriving back in the city, Jason would learn that King Peleus had put his father to death during his absence, with revenge now the only thing on his mind. Approaching the king with the golden fleece, Jason demanded that the kingdom be rightfully transferred to him, but Peleus, not honouring his word, would refuse, asking Jason to leave. However, Medea, realising the king would never give up his throne, came up with a cunning plan. Inviting the king's daughters to attend, Medea would chop an old ram into pieces, boiling it in a cauldron for all to see. Using her magic, the ram would come back to life, jumping out of the cauldron with its youth restored. But Peleus' daughters, having seen their father grow old and weary just as the ram had, desired him to be rejuvenated as well. And so, when Medea told them she could perform the same magic on the king, their faces lit up with joy. Sneaking into Peleus' room when all were asleep, they would chop their father into pieces and throw him in the cauldron, eagerly awaiting Medea's return the next morning. But upon seeing the king butchered by his own daughters, all Medea could do was laugh, her cunning plan having worked exactly as foreseen. With Peleus now dead, Jason was ready to take the throne. However, the king's son, Acastus, would discover Medea's involvement in the gruesome murder, driving her and Jason from the city.
यदि ऑटोमेटेड ट्रेडिंग सीखनी है तो ये वीडियो पूरा देखो।
सॉफ्टवेयर ये मेरे इंस्टॉल्ड है। ये जो राइट साइड पे आप
Traveling south, they would find a new home in the city of Corinth, with Jason taking the golden fleece and hanging it in the temple of Zeus, leaving his life of adventure behind. Creating a new family with Medea, the two would have many children together. But as the years went on, Jason's eyes would begin to wander. Craving the fame and fortune of his youth, he would look for a wife that he could use to rise through the ranks of society, abandoning Medea and his family to marry the Princess Kryxna. Betrayed and her heart broken, having murdered her own brother to help Jason, Medea would swear revenge, sending a magic robe to Kryxna as a wedding gift. As soon as the robe touched her skin, Kryxna's flesh would begin to burn, with her letting out a scream of agony. Her elderly father would attempt to save her, but upon touching the robe, he too would begin to burn, with the pair dying together in front of Jason's tearful eyes. Horrified at the death of his new wife, Jason, knowing who had sent the cursed robe, would draw his sword and rush to confront Medea, but upon finding her, he would discover the true extent of her rage. For at her feet lay the dead bodies of their two sons, Alcamenes and Tysander, with blood still dripping from the dagger Medea had used to kill them. Dropping to his knees, Jason would begin to weep, with Medea flying off in the chariot of her grandfather, the sun god Helios, her final act of revenge complete. Jason would go on to live the rest of his life as a lonely man, never finding love and producing no more children. Clinging on to the memories of his youth, Jason would often visit the Argo, which had been deserted on the shore. With many years having passed, and Jason now an old man, one day, while he was lying under the ship, its rotting stern would collapse, crushing him below. The ship that had once brought him fame and fortune would now be the very thing that brought his life to an end. As for Medea, she would flee to the city of Athens, gaining refuge and using her beauty to seduce King Augeas. Becoming queen, she would bear him a son, but her rise to power would soon be challenged when the city's rightful heir, the great hero Theseus, would return to claim the throne. Many years before Medea's arrival to Athens, King Augeas had ruled the city alone, having tried and failed many times to father an heir to which he could leave his kingdom. Believing he was incapable of having children, Augeas would travel to Delphi and ask the oracle for help, who would instruct him to travel to the small kingdom of Trozen, where the city's princess Aethra would bear him a son. Overjoyed, Augeas would travel to Trozen and meet with the princess Aethra, with the two conceiving a child that night. However, unknown to Augeas, Poseidon would also visit Aethra the same evening, with the child that was born, Theseus, being the offspring of the two men. With Poseidon's blood now running through his veins, Theseus would be granted immense agility and strength, something that would prove useful in the many trials that lay ahead. But King Augeas, knowing it was his duty to return to Athens, would leave the princess to raise the boy alone. Only when Theseus was old and strong enough to lift a heavy stone, under which Augeas had hid his sword and sandals, would he be worthy of travelling to Athens to claim his birthright, with the items he retrieved being symbols by which Augeas could recognise his son. When the day finally came, Theseus, having reached manhood, would lift up the rock and claim his father's possessions, soon setting out on the road to Athens. But when Theseus arrived in Athens, Medea, his father's new queen, had already bore the king a son named Midas, who was next in line to the throne.
First of